Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Herstory Online Summit. Today is day 20 of our 31-day challenge, and I have to thank all of the amazing people who have stepped forward to share their stories with us. It has been a fascinating summit with just a multitude and a variety of stories coming in from all over the world. So before I begin today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. Thank you for hosting me in this beautiful country. Absolutely loving being in Melbourne, Australia. So if you are online watching this broadcast right now, just go into the chat, say hello, tell me where you're based. And now I'm going to launch into the amazing lineup of speakers that we have for today. So we're going to start off with Michelle Fishburne. She is the founder of Who We Are Now, the only COVID-19 oral history project of its kind. Collected primarily in person during a 12,000-mile RV trek back and forth across the United States between September 2020 and March 2021. Michelle interviewed more than 300 people in 35 states. Her question was simple. In January 1st, 2020, what was your 2020 supposed to be like, and what did it end up being? Through to the present, the stories she collected present an authentic mosaic of the American experience while the pandemic was still cruising through the country. Her work as an oral historian and storyteller has been compared to that of Stud Terrell, the author of the 1974 classic Working. Her journey to figure out who we are now has been linked to Stain Black's 10,000-mile trek across Australia in 1960 in search of what are Americans like today. So Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It must have been a fascinating journey for you to go from one end of the United States to the other, curating these amazing stories of all these people that you met along the way. And we're really looking forward to hearing what you have to share with us today. So this is Michelle Fishburne in the United States. Thank you so much. Okay, there seems to be a slight error with our video. So if you bear with me a second, I will try and queue up the right video. Something went wrong there for a minute. I think I have figured it out. So bear with me. Here we go.
Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Michelle Fishburne, and welcome to Pluck and Grit, American Female Entrepreneurs During the Pandemic. And get ready to be inspired, because this is an inspiring group of women. And in order to do this right, I will have some notes so that I don't leave out any of the big nuggets. And I've just returned from a 12,000-mile RV trip all over America. My goal was to interview people about their lives during the pandemic. All sorts of people, as Maria said, yoga instructors, monks, comedians, mayors. Among the people I interviewed were a bunch of female entrepreneurs, and it's an amazing group of women, and I can only highlight a few of them. So, right, are you guys ready? Come on, let's see some nods. All right, good. All right, so I've made it easy for you to see these women as I'm presenting. So if you, like I said, if you go on my Facebook page, Who We Are Now USA, the most recent link has all the links to their stories, so you can see them while I talk about them. Same thing with LinkedIn, and that's at Who We Are Now. Okay, and so while you're doing that, I want to just review definitions for a minute. The word pluck is not used very much these days, and it means spirited and determined courage. What comes to mind for you? What image during the pandemic of pluck? For me, it's the Italians standing on their balconies, singing and making music during quarantine. Now let's talk about grit. Grit means courage and resolve, strength of character. The image that comes to mind for me is Nicole Brassington, an ICU nurse who, along with 3 other female healthcare workers, decided to start a glamping retreat right before the pandemic. Now, if you're on my Facebook page or LinkedIn, look at that photo of those 4 women. 4 of them, Nicole, an ICU nurse during the pandemic, and 3 other female healthcare workers. And they're standing there like bosses, because they started this glamping retreat. But when I say started, what that means is they had the land, although they hadn't gotten the bank loan for it yet. They had ordered some luxury teepees. They had commissioned tiny cabins to be made out of shipping containers. And that's how they had started. And then the pandemic hit. And so they think about the dollar signs. You've ordered luxury teepees, you've got some land, you've got containers that are being converted. When they went to the bank during the COVID spring, or banks, to get a loan, they all said, no, are you kidding me? Your hospitality industry, nobody is doing loans to the hospitality industry. In addition to that, the zoning process was delayed. The tiny containers, the tiny houses from the containers, that was delayed. The teepees were being made in the Northwest. That was delayed because of the wildfires. And then when they finally opened up the glamping retreat in the fall of 2020, they had to shut it down immediately because the COVID cases in that state spiked. Grit, resolve. Or bad judgment? No. Where did the resolve come from? Where did the grit come from? They have an unbelievable idea. This glamping retreat is located right next to an attraction that pre-COVID had 70,000 visitors a month. But the town only has 2 motels and 60 Airbnb units. Right? It's a great idea. So Nicole and her team have hunkered down, knowing that they will be successful when things start getting back to normal. That was a good one to start with, right? Grit. Unbelievable grit. Next up is Anea. Anea Gregory, a college student who launched a fashion line during COVID. That's right, during it. And here's what she said, and I'm going to read directly from her words. I wanted to do something during the pandemic. I'm 21 years old, and I couldn't really go anywhere. I wanted to do something that was really impactful and be able to say I did it when I was 21. So I launched an e-commerce retailing business called The Repertoire. I've always wanted to, right, 21. I've always wanted to start a clothing line. 2020 was the perfect time for me to sit down and take time to start it. So let's just pause here for a moment. Can you hear the self-confidence in her voice? The command of the vision and the belief in herself is just truly wonderful. And listen to this. The repertoire's motto is embrace the uncomfortable and walk with purpose. Let me repeat that. Embrace the uncomfortable and walk with purpose. That sure sounds to me like the definition of pluck, spirited and determined courage. And when I asked Anea why she chose that as the motto, she said, well, it's what I'm doing. I'm embracing the uncomfortable and I'm walking with purpose. Wow. Next up is Christina Wong, a comedian in Los Angeles. She had just launched her first national tour right when COVID hit. She even had gotten rave review from the LA Times and standing ovations. And well, we all know what happened. What happened to the national tour? Canceled. What happened to everything else she was doing? Canceled. So let me describe it in her words. It was really kind of perilous. How am I going to make a living as an artist who tours live if I can't be in front of crowds? You're not going to guess what happened next. She made face masks. Well, you probably could have guessed that. Then she put, well, you're not be able to guess this part. She put face masks out on Facebook and said, whoever wants one, let me know. And she was inundated. And you probably could have guessed that too. Well, what if I told you that she assembled a team of volunteers all over the United States, and together they made and delivered 250,000 masks to vulnerable communities between March and December. Kind of unexpected, right? She went from being a comedian to running a new, built from the ground up, national nonprofit almost overnight. I think the operative word for her is pivot. I know that word's become cliche, but it really fits what Christina did. Also, grit is a great word here. Strength of character, determination. She saw a need. She stepped in without flinching. Frankly, she even stepped in without thinking. And she just had belief in herself. And she was supported by a community of women, mostly women and some men, who shared her view. Let's shift now to Robin. Robin is, for me, the doubling down example. Doubling down during the pandemic. At 60-something, Robin was a successful interior designer and an extremely successful influencer on Instagram. She has almost 70,000 followers. She is a leader in midlife influencing and was hosting a large conference in Atlanta for, you guessed it, the last week of March 2020. So you know what happened to that? It got canceled. And you know what happened to her interior design business? It got canceled. What didn't stop, though, was how many of us were scrolling and scrolling through our phones. And boomers weren't going into stores to shop. In fact, nobody was going into stores to shop. So the boomer brands had to figure out a way to get their products in front of us. So Robin and other midlife influencers have been besieged with collaboration opportunities during the pandemic. And she's made more money in 2020 being an influencer than she did with interior design. Now you're going to say, oh, but Michelle, you said that that was closed down. Well, don't forget, housing really picked up in the summer, and she has houses in Hilton Head, Park City, and Atlanta, and all of those places saw huge booms, and she could have had a great booming business, but chose not to, because she doubled down on this wave that she saw. She took advantage of this wave, and she did it with confidence and looking absolutely fabulous. The next person up is Elizabeth Eisel. She started her business when she was 70 years old. You're probably thinking, oh, Michelle misspoke. No, I'm gonna check my notes. Yeah, she was 70. That was 7 years ago. Elizabeth started the Global Institute for Experienced Entrepreneurship. Her firm belief is those of us 50 plus are an untapped resource for the entire world, and GDPs of countries would actually go up not insignificantly if we were all deployed to continue to do the work that we love and use the skills that we have developed over all these years. So Elizabeth, for the past 7 years, has been trotting across the globe to conferences. The UN's Secretary General had her speak at 2 conferences in 2020, and that was just, 2019, and that was just a few of them. So Elizabeth, though, had a suboptimal situation. She is really excellent at networking in person, and she meets with leaders of governments. She has helped them revise programs and policies to really unleash this talent, but she could not do it over the internet. She did do the Zooms, but one of the things to keep in mind is, and that she keeps in mind, is she says, Michelle, my time is running out. How much longer can I do this? And she is burning to spend all of her time to help those of us who come after her, so that we can have a fruitful, energetic, interesting life throughout our lives if we choose to continue to work. Last up is Marilyn Joy, and that is her last name. And so it's perfect to end with Marilyn. So Marilyn started a barber shop in downtown St. Louis 27 years ago. And when I interviewed her, it was her 67th birthday. And right before COVID, she was about to retire. And she is a single older woman. And during quarantine, she was so bored. And so quarantine taught her, number one, there is no way I am retiring. I will just not even know what to do with myself. Second thing is, she didn't have much money. So in order, if you are an entrepreneur, one of the keys that I have found after interviewing hundreds of them now is every customer is community. A customer is not a customer. A customer is a member of the community. And if you do that, your business will flourish. During the shutdown, she was sent checks and Venmos, etc., from so many of her customers. One guy even sent her half of his stimulus check because they wanted to make sure she was okay. Community and joy in what you're doing. 2 of the secrets of being a great entrepreneur. And that this is a good place to wrap up. And there are more stories on my website, currently over 100, and the website is whowearenow.us. Here are the takeaways. Pluck and grit will get you through. Problem solving by pivoting, doubling down, and confronting suboptimal situations is imperative. Always think of who you are serving as community, not customers. And last thing is, do it with joy. And if you do it with joy, you will have a successful time as an entrepreneur. And that wraps it up.
I was muted, the famous word for 2022. Thank you so much, Michelle. It was wonderful hearing your story. And thank you for traveling across the United States and capturing all of these inspiring stories. People who started businesses in the middle of a pandemic, people who were able to pivot and find different things to do despite the challenges that they were faced with in 2020. The last 2 years have been very, very interesting. So, what are you going to do with your life from this moment on? Where are you now? What are you seeing as the changes that are coming in 2022? I think we are going to be in the middle of this crazy situation for a few years more. I don't think the world will quite go back to where it used to be. It's going to take a while. Thank you for the people who are chiming in online. My brother Mungusha in Uganda, thank you for being there and listening. If you have any questions or comments, just type them in the chat and I will share them as I am showing you all of these amazing stories that we've curated from all over the world. So that was Michelle Fishburne, an amazing woman with an amazing story coming to us from the United States. My next speaker is coming in from Canada. Sharon Peel helps brands define their stories and tell them to the marketplace by creating everything from a tweet to a book. She's a novelist, a graphics designer, a marketing professional with a passion for story. Her latest projects help women explore themselves and heal through story. Her company is called Market Appeal, and it publishes multimedia, interactive digital periodicals to tell brand stories to targeted audiences by gathering the pieces of their fragmented digital story. So visit her website if you like, marketappeal.agency. And Michelle, thank you for sharing your amazing wisdom, sharing your story with our community and being a part of our tribe. We're going to share your video and then have a little discussion about it afterwards. So this is Sharon Peel in Canada.
So my name is Shannon Peel, and I have a company called Market Appeal, because when you have a last name that's a noun and a verb, you use it. Thank you so much for having me here. First of all, I'm so blessed just to meet you and be a part of this. So my name is Shannon Peel, and I have a company called Market Appeal, because when you have a last name that's a noun and a verb, you use it. I live in downtown Vancouver, BC, Canada. Beautiful place, absolutely gorgeous. I am extremely blessed. And as of tomorrow, I will be 48 years old. So, yes, it's been a journey. So, as I was telling you before, I really had to lose everything I was scared to lose in order to find myself. It took a long time for me to hit bottom and to get into that mud pit of life where I was, spending the day at home, and all of a sudden this calmness would come over me and all the pain I was feeling inside, all that emotional stuff would just disappear. And I'd be like, huh, and I would just be in peace. And then all of a sudden my brain would show me how to kill myself. And it just felt like the right thing to do because it just made so much sense. Now, thankfully, I'm a Taurus, born in the year of the ox, and that stubborn tenacity got me through that and got me past those places, as well as my belief in God. Now, before you start thinking, oh, God loves me, blah, blah, blah. No, it was more, I believe in a second life, and the idea of dying and waking up in another place made me even more depressed. So it kept me on this side, thankfully. How did I get from confident, fearless, successful woman that I was to this woman who was a broken image of herself? That's my story. And it starts with a bad decision. And that bad decision was I tried to buy a business, and it was at the time, when that book, The Secret, came out, and I had this great relationship with God, and I thought, oh, everything was aligning. Like, this business was mine. It was, yeah. And the bank guy at the bank said, oh yeah, you shouldn't have a problem. This all looks good. Da, da. And I took that as a cue that everything was going to be work out, because all I had to do now was commit, do what The Secret said and commit to this. And I did. And then the bank came back and said, no, we're not going to give you the money. And I didn't have time to figure out a new solution. And I lost $20,000, which, happens. However, my husband at the time took this as an opportunity. And that was my first loss, because I lost my confidence, and he took control of all the finances. I basically came home, gave him my paycheck, and that was it. So that was the beginning of the loss of my power, the loss of my voice. I lost choices. He moved us to Vancouver. I lost my value in the marriage. I lost my value. And then it just went downhill from there. There's a lot of things that happened in between. But one day I finally got this job and everything was going good. And he used his keyword, divorce, to try and get in line. And this time I said, fine. Yep, I'm not arguing. I'm not changing. Let's go for it. So I lost my marriage, and things got so bad that at one point he was screaming at me. And once again, that whole calmness, I was totally detached from the situation. It was like this veil was between us. And I knew that I was in trouble, that he was going to cross a line he had not crossed before. He had threatened to cross plenty of times, but he had not actually crossed. So I knew I had to leave the house. When that happened, of course, I lost my middle-class lifestyle, because his idea of paying child support was a fraction of what he was supposed to pay. The children came with me full-time, and we went from a 2,700 square foot home to a basement suite, and then to a 2-bedroom apartment. I didn't have any money, so I lost my financial security. And I was making ends meet. I mean, I didn't get introduced to some places I'd never thought I'd ever see, like the food bank line and some social services. And when I met with, I live in Canada, so we have a lot of government resources for us, and which is great. And I would go and I would talk to the justice people at Family Justice, and they had lawyers and stuff. And every single one said I was presenting as an abused woman. And I didn't believe them. I was like, what are you talking about? I'm not abused. And then they would say, okay, so you're going to fight for child support. I'm like, oh, no, we can't do that. No, we can't upset him. He said he'd pay this much. That's okay. And they're like, yeah, you need to go and deal with that before we can move forward with getting you, with fighting for you. So I was just making ends meet. And then I lost my job. That was fun. Single mom, lost my job. And then, government financial backing was disappearing. My government caseworker couldn't understand why I couldn't get a job, because I was going through these month-long interview processes where you start with the phone interview, and the next thing you know, you're on the 10th interview. And I was always coming up second or third. And she was like, I don't understand it. So all of a sudden, all that, I felt unemployable. I felt that I had no economic value. And I was scared they were going to come take my kids away, because I couldn't afford to put a roof over their head. Then my parents were like, okay, you got to do something. And I tried to give my ex 60% of the house. Like, he finally moved out of the house 2 years later, and finally sold the house after 2 years. He was living in at that time with his mom and his girlfriend. And so I said, take 60%, just give me 40%, and we're good. But he was, nope, that's not enough. I want 70% and 50-50 with the kids so that I don't have to pay any child support. So my mom said, okay, I'm stepping in. And when she finally learned, he showed her true colors to her, his true colors to her. And that was the tipping point for me, because all of a sudden there was a credit card. I had a lawyer, and they were loaning, and then they were willing to loan me money against the money from the house. And the first thing that the lawyer did was send my ex a no contact order, which is kind of like a restraining order in Canada. For the first time, I felt protected. I felt somebody was in my corner. I felt like I wasn't alone. It was like this big, huge weight just fell off me. I mean, the day we were giving him the papers was terrifying, but after that, it was just totally, my life changed around. My parents started loaning me money against the house money, and then I got a job, and then I found a new place where it was 3 bedrooms, and I was able to create a home for my kids. My son even moved kids into my house. Like, I had kids all over the place. It was wonderful. My daughter was there, my son was there. And then one day my son comes up to me, he's like, Mom, I'm moving out. I'm 18. I'm going to move in with my friends who were all living with me. And I'm like, okay. I wasn't happy about it, but in my head, I'm going, okay, he's 18, everything's okay. So they moved out and moved up the street. And then I lost my job again. And when that happened, the stress came back of not being able to find a job. How am I going to be able to pay for and all that stuff? So I think my daughter at the time was really kind of, okay, I don't want to go through this again. And something happened, and she took off to her brother's house. And the next morning I get a text from my ex-husband. Like, remember, my kids haven't talked to me. I get a text from my ex-husband saying, Kennedy has told me what it's like to live with you. I'm giving them the child support, which the lawyer had fought to finally get for me. I'm giving them the child support, and Kennedy is moving in with Carter. I did not take that well, because the one thing I hadn't failed at yet was being a mom. And I was a good mom. And that moment, my daughter didn't talk to me for 4 months, because of how angry I got. She never saw me mad before. And then I apologized profusely right afterwards, because I'm like, I get it, okay. But it put a strain on our relationship. And that's when I was finally alone. Didn't have a job, didn't have child support. Thankfully, I still had the money from the house. And the government had applied to get into this program for self-employment, and the government accepted. And once they did that, I was going to these classes to learn how to be self-employed, which was really funny, because I'd had 3 successful businesses in my past. It wasn't like I didn't know what to do, but you got to jump through hoops to get the support. And once I did that, it's taken me a long time to get back to where I am now. I've run the gamut of issues, but COVID was a blessing for me, because COVID here, like, we shut down, and I was isolated in my 400 square foot apartment in downtown Vancouver by myself. And I had to really take a look at my business, where it was, where I wanted it to go, and my life.
Yeah.
I'd made a lot of bad decisions over those years, and I had to start really looking at the story I was telling myself, and look at the story that I needed to tell. And one of the things I had done during that turbulent time of leaving the house and finally getting support was I wrote a novel. And basically the novel is 5 women who are in their 40s, and they are looking at life, how to navigate life in the 21st century. And these 5 women represent the 5 different sides of me. There's the stay-at-home mom who was the perfect mom and the perfect wife and had the perfect life and thought that she just knew what was going on. And yeah, that was me at one point. There was the sister who was the divorce lawyer, who was bitter, and just dating like it talks about dating and stuff like that too, but she's just bitter. Then there was her friend who was the woman, the party girl who loved men, and it was all about fun, fun, fun. And then there was the woman who was abused, and she would just come out of her marriage, and she was a broken person. And then the last one was the woman that, you know, looked like she had it all. She had the she had a stay-at-home job, business that was really successful. She had perfect kids, the perfect husband that every woman wanted. And yet she was depressed because she couldn't understand why. It just didn't feel like there was something missing in her life. So it really looks at life from these women's point of view. And now what I'm doing is I'm taking that, because each chapter is really a blog post written by one of the women. And I'm breaking it apart and creating a series to help women figure out their story and heal through story. It's about, you know, you get the bit of the novel. There's, you know, I talk a little bit about the topic that's in the novel. And then there's questions to journal about, to really look at your opinions, your values. How did it affect, were you affected by that in your life? Do you know anyone that was affected by that in their life? And really looking at the language that we use when we tell ourselves stories.
Yeah.
And the language that we use when we're helping people who are in those places. Because unfortunately, you know, I had to walk away from a lot of people because their good intentions just made things worse. So that's why COVID.
Wow. You have a fascinating story with just so many layers to it. I want to take you back a little bit. If you could have a conversation with the younger you, that young woman who had lost her home, lost her husband, is in a crisis, right in the beginning.
So not that far back.
Let's go far back. Based on what life has taught you to get to this point, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give her?
You matter. You matter. Your parents do love you no matter what. And it's okay to fail. It's not the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. And now you are using and harnessing all of this pain, all of this strength to help other women who are going through something similar. And that's really quite fascinating for me. If you were to go into your future at the age of 100 and you're sitting in your rocking chair surrounded by your grandchildren, and you could have a conversation with the future you based on how you're living your life, what would you say to her?
You're living your life for you, not for your parents, not for your husband, not for your kids, not for the people in the world that say you should have 2.45 kids and live in the suburbs. And you've lived a life that you were supposed to live. You've lived the best life that you can live. Perception of what life should be.
That's awesome. And now through this book that you've written, it's interesting that it represents all of the facets of who you are. And you've really managed to break it down and touch on all of those parts of yourself. How can people get access to this? Are you coaching? Are you mentoring? What are you doing with this material?
Well, it is on my website, marketappeal.agency, not .com. That's a whole other thing. I got to buy that, I know. But it's marketappeal.agency. And if you go into the store, there's the books. And you can download the first book and read it. There is a membership piece. If you want to become a Story Appeal member, then you get the whole journaling and all the pieces that help you, plus challenges and access to forums and stuff like that, just about how to tell your story, how to tell your story in a compelling way that will enable you to get help, and how to have a voice. That was one of the major things that I learned, because I allowed people to say hurtful things to me. I allowed knee-jerk reactions to affect my self-value because I didn't have the voice and the words to say, look, that actually hurts me when you say that.
A lot of times too, you're caught off guard, and in the moment you don't know how to react or respond.
Mm-hmm.
And then you don't know how to go back to it to address it. So what would you recommend somebody do in a situation like that?
Well, when you know your story, and a lot of times that these people, when they say stuff to you, these are people that are close to you that don't say it once. They say things over and over and over again. So it's about understanding how you are processing what they're saying, and then understanding where they're coming from. You know, a lot of the things we read were based out of fear, were based out of not seeing me as an individual. And then able to rewrite the story so that the next time they say something, you're able to say, hey, look, I understand that you love me and that you're scared for me. However, when you say this, I feel this, or I think you're saying this. And they come back and they go, that isn't what I intended. And it's like, your intent doesn't matter. What matters is my interpretation.
Yeah.
Because you're not communicating properly. And then you
learn it's interesting that it is the stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah. Don't tell my mom I admitted that, because she kept on saying, you're telling the story wrong. You're telling the story wrong. You shouldn't say you got kicked out of the house. I'm like, well, that is the fact. He kicked me out of my house. And yes, that is a fact. But in the end, I chose to leave because it was I can either say I got kicked out of the house, or I chose to leave because it was an unsafe situation.
Yeah.
Which one sounds more empowering? And my mom kept on telling me that I needed to say that. I'm like, no. Well,
sounds to me like you've got a wise mother by your side.
Right. Moms are right, damn it. When you don't want them to be.
Oh, Shannon, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. And thank you to everybody who has tuned in. It's just been amazing, the number of women I've been meeting through these interviews, the layers and layers of stories. And you're so right. We do heal as well when we share the stories. And I love the fact that you're encouraging people to journal, because sometimes you just have to get those crazy voices out of your head and put them on paper.
Writing and writing the novel. And I write a lot, like on my blog, I write a lot about emotions, like what is fear, emotions and professionalism. You know, like when your boss says something to you and you want to, like, how do you process that? What's allowed? What's not allowed? What is fear? What is hope? And so I write those because I'm struggling with those things myself.
Yes.
So journaling really does help you understand what is really going on in your head.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Sharon. It is all in your head. Have a fantastic day, everybody. This is Gertrude in Wellington. I will see you again tomorrow. Have a great day wherever you are in the world. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you very much.
Wow. It's another amazing story from another phenomenal woman who went through so many challenges, but has definitely come out on the other side, empowered, energized, able to help herself, help others, help her children. What blows me away is the resilience of all of these amazing people that I get to meet. You know, each time a woman shares her story, that story becomes the light at the end of the tunnel for another woman. And it's incredible that all of these women are stepping forward. They're saying, yes, I have something to share. This might help somebody else. And these stories are just absolutely magical. So we're joined with one of our speakers who has graced our stage before, Paula, are you ready to come online? I met this amazing lady a couple of years ago through a podcast, and she is with us today, very impromptu, because one of our speakers is actually not feeling very well. So I sent her a message on Facebook and I asked if she could come and join us. So let me see if Paula is available. If she is, she will come online, switch on her video. So Paula, if you're there, we're ready to hear your amazing story. In the meantime, I could try and share. Oh, hold on a second. I think that's her. Okay, so the beautiful Paula is going to be joining us now. Paula, your video is switched off. I'm not sure if you can hear me. There you are.
Can you guys
Absolutely
see me? I
wonderful.
apologize. I'm not that camera ready.
Wonderful to see you, Paula. Thank you
Oh,
so
I
much
can't
for
hear.
responding.
Here.
One of our speakers today has COVID, so I sent you a message on Facebook. Thank you
Can
for
you hear me? I
responding.
can't hear you.
I can hear you. You can't hear me, Paula? I can hear you clearly. Let's see here. Something is wrong with your sound. Maybe drop out of the call and come back in again. Can you hear me now, Paula?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I can't hear you.
Let's
I have no
see.
sound. That's weird.
Drop out of the call and come
Okay, I'll
back
come
again.
right back.
Okay. Sometimes that happens when you're connecting on StreamYard. It will pick up the video and not the sound. So we'll just give Paula a few seconds to come back online. I was just saying that one of the beautiful things about this job is I have women from all over the world who, you know, at the drop of a hat, if I am in need of speakers, I have so many women I'm connected with online who react, respond almost instantly. And yes, we're really blessed to have Paula with us today. Let's see if she can come on. Can you hear me now, Paula?
Yes, I can hear you. You got me. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Yes, I can. Thank you. Sometimes when you come on StreamYard, the connection picks up the video and not the sound.
Oh, okay.
So Paula is a holistic health consultant, and she teaches people to change their diet and lifestyle. Her specialty is in food allergies and sensitivities, digestive issues, and autoimmune disease. She does several consultations. She does group coaching, lectures, workshops, and food demos as well. So, Paula, welcome back to our stage. We would love to have you share what your story is all about, how you came about becoming a healer, and especially with this particular specialty. And I'll let you talk for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then I'll start chiming in with my questions and comments. You know the drill, right?
Yes. All right. So,
Wonderful.
like I said, I apologize for my appearance. I didn't know I was coming on today. So anyway, yeah, I'm a holistic health counselor. I've been teaching and doing my business since about 2010. I worked in a prison for about 22 years. And if you can imagine working in a place where you're almost a prisoner yourself, there were just days where I would start 7 to 3, work 3 to 11. And, by the time my relief would come, I didn't get out of there till about 11:15. So it's almost like working 3 shifts. Sometimes we didn't have enough people on. So, or people would call in sick, I should say. So I'd get stuck, 2 shifts, whatever it was. Sometimes I didn't get relieved even to go to the bathroom. I worked in dispatch. So I was a dispatcher. It was an all-male prison. So if you can imagine, I started in 1990. We had about 800 inmates. When I left, I forget if it was 2012 or 13, forgive me, we had about 1,200 or 1,300 inmates. So it really doubled in size. My health deteriorated because of the job. It was very stressful. We were the heart of the institution. We handled everything. It was a special services division. It's in Massachusetts. I'm now in North Carolina. I moved to North Carolina. And we would just, we handled everything. Like if there was a stabbing, if there was a riot, there was an escape, all that stuff, I handled that. So it took a toll on my health. I was on by myself quite a bit. Other people were supposed to be on with me, but things would happen. If it was a fellow dispatcher, they'd call in sick a lot. And then if it was an officer, they were supposed to help us out, but then, excuse my language, shit would hit the fan and they would be back on the outside handling whatever the situation was, whether it was a riot, stabbing, escape, whatever it might be. So I handled the heart of the institution. Everything went through me. The phones were off the walls. Back in the day, we didn't even have automated phones. I was asked to count how many phone calls we got on a Friday evening. And I counted 450 calls, and that was all through me. Nobody else was answering the phones, just me. So as time went on, they got 2 switchboards, and we still didn't have automated phones. They wanted us to be in live, in person, answering the phone. So anyway, all that to say, I developed my own health challenges. I developed multiple food allergies, and I almost died from that. And as you can see, I have a book behind me that I did through Herstory. And I talk about how the enemy has tried to take me out since birth. And food allergies was one of those instances. So I almost died several times. So talking about in the workplace, here's some tips for you. So for one, if you're sick and you're working in the workplace, you're stressed out, but you're afraid to leave, you're afraid they can't replace you, you're afraid you can't pay the bills, there's a couple things you can do. Number one, if you're sick, something's going on in your body, whether it's cancer, whether, or the start of cancer, or you're trying to, whatever it is, food allergies, or you're just sick all the time from working. If you have to go to a doctor because you don't know what's going on because of the stress of your job, or if you have to be hospitalized even, get that documented. That was one of my biggest mistakes. I did not get it documented. As far as they're concerned, they don't care. That little old me that worked there for 22 years got sick and I had to leave eventually. It didn't exist to them. It's not documented. I didn't go to the hospital. I'd be at work. I remember putting my feet up on the desk because I was going into anaphylactic shock. Because I literally didn't get relief half the time. I'd be eating peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, answering the phones. So things like that. Make sure you get it documented. I'd be at work, putting my feet up on the desk, being in the bathroom with my feet up, whatever it might be, because that would get the blood flow to my heart. If I was choking on my throat would be closing up, basically, is what would happen. So I put my feet up to get the blood flow going, just so I could get that to pass, so I could be, okay. So that's something that I was dealing with. So from there, I started to study nutrition. I went to the Integrative School of Nutrition in New York City, the New York School of Integrative Nutrition. And just really started to study it and help myself. I went to several doctors, several practitioners, and they all helped me in their own way, but nobody was helping me completely. I really had to help myself. I had to be my own advocate. I just didn't, I just didn't know how to help myself. I became allergic to everything. I didn't know what to put in my mouth. And my downfall, oddly enough, was, I'll have to say my rock bottom was stopping at the grocery store to get marshmallows. And I knew I couldn't live on marshmallows. But, these practitioners just weren't helping me. They weren't telling me what I could eat. And I'd be like nearly dying. I lost weight because I didn't know what to eat. I went, all these things happened. Go back a little ways. When I was 21, I had my tonsils out, and I figured out as I fast forwarded later in life that the reason I had to have my tonsils out was because I had food allergies. My glands got swollen, but the inside of my throat didn't hurt, and I didn't know what was going on. My doctor was like, "Oh, those tonsils have to come out." Back then, I was 21 years old. They said the tonsils had to come out. The tonsils came out, and then I was allergic to everything I was having after the tonsils came out. So I dropped down to 92 pounds because I couldn't have anything. I couldn't have the medicine. It would make me gag. I couldn't have chicken broth. It would make me gag. I'd have, what was the other thing? Apple juice, chicken broth. I think I might have said it. Different things would just make me gag. It was because I had an allergy back then and I didn't know it. So I was tired all the time. I couldn't lose weight. I was bloated because I wasn't digesting the food I ate. So fast forward, I was 21 when this happened, but I didn't know till I was about 30, 31 years old when it reared its ugly head. The stress brought it on from the job. I was there all the time. Couldn't speak my voice ever. You couldn't speak up because it was all political. Everybody knew somebody. So I couldn't, speak up if people weren't showing up or if they were leaving on me. They would say, "Oh, I'm going here," and they'd never come back, whatever it was. So things like that, it just reared its toll on me. So from going to integrative nutrition, I also took a raw food course, and I learned how to go back to basics, start eating whole foods, not cooking them, how to rotate foods, because I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know that I couldn't digest these foods. And the biggest culprit was gluten, but I didn't know it, and nobody diagnosed that. It just took a while to figure out. I did allergy testing to try and figure out what was going on, and I found out I was allergic to multiple different things, you name it. Corn, wheat, gluten, dairy, what else? I'm trying to think. Soy, like everything you can think of. Multiple food allergies. So you can imagine I was starving myself to death just to stay alive. I went to a nutritionist, wonderful person, but she was more concerned with what foods my body needed, which is it's understandable, and it was all about like, are you getting enough carbs? Are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough this? That's fine, but I needed to just survive. She put me on like Boost Breeze and some shakes, but there was all chemicals in there. My body just couldn't handle it. So like I said, I just started studying nutrition, helping myself, eating whole foods, learning about things from like my raw food class, which I had no idea. I learned about like wheatgrass and juicing and sprouts, different things like that. So that really helped me. I began teaching on classes. I had raw food classes back in Massachusetts, just teaching people how to eat whole foods without cooking. So we do like a vegetarian sushi class. Lyme disease fell into my lap. So I help with food allergies, food sensitivities, and autoimmune. Now, autoimmune is kind of falls under the umbrella of Lyme disease, but I don't like to limit things to Lyme anymore because there's so many things that are similar. So the similar illnesses would be fibromyalgia, lupus, MS, Parkinson's, ALS. The woman that founded Central Mass Lyme Foundation in Massachusetts, her mom was misdiagnosed with ALS. She really had Lyme disease. They diagnosed her, I don't know, right? They must have done an autopsy and they actually diagnosed it with Lyme disease. So she had Lyme all this time and they said it was ALS and she wound up dying from it. So Michelle started Central Mass Lyme Foundation. I met Michelle by teaching a raw food class because her husband wasn't feeling well, oddly enough. Fast forward, they didn't know it at the time. We stayed in touch through Facebook, I think. And we figured, they got him tested. He did have Lyme disease. Didn't know it at the time. I don't even think her mom had been diagnosed at the time that she took my class. So we stayed in touch. I wound up doing a couple of talks on Lyme disease and just studying it, researching it. I've met some of the famous doctors with Lyme disease, like Dr. Charles Ray Jones. I went to a conference in Philadelphia here in the U.S. And just met some of these famous doctors, and they're amazing. They're doing all they can to learn about Lyme disease, but it's a really tough disease. You can go back and watch another video where I talked about it a lot on Herstory, but it just fell into my lap. So I've really studied it and learned a lot about it. So if you're out there and you have joint pain, headaches, like knee pain, hip pain, or you've had to have hip surgery, can't remember things and you're young, like you want to just say, oh, that pencil over there and it's on the tip of your tongue and you can't say it, things like that. You've got gut issues. Nobody can tell you what's wrong with you. It might be Lyme disease. You might want to get tested for Lyme. So those are some things. So I've taught one-on-one coaching. I've taught at a group hospital, did a group at a hospital. Sorry, a little tongue twisted. In Fitchburg, Massachusetts. I did that. Taught in Boston. I taught the Urban College of Boston. That was amazing to teach them because a lot of them were Latino, African American. Their culture was very, very different. A lot of us take for granted we know how to take care of our health. We just don't do it. A lot of these people in the Urban College of Boston that I was teaching, they really just didn't have a clue how to be healthy. It wasn't taught to them in school. Their culture brought them up to eat lots of pastries and junk food. One woman, her daughter died at the age of 21. She didn't really tell me exactly what it was, but she just died in her sleep. She was overweight herself. And, I was just so grateful to be able to help her to understand how to eat healthy. I don't know where she's at now, but it could have been that her daughter was overweight too. I don't know. She never really went into it, but might have just been unhealthy. And that's why her daughter passed away on her. So I was grateful to teach them. I ran a movie for them, Reverse Diabetes in 30 Days. Watch that film. It's not just for diabetes. You can reverse almost any illness. Now, this is not medical advice. Check with your doctor, especially if you're dealing with something. Full disclosure there. But watch that movie. If you're dealing with something, you might learn something in that film that might help you. It's not just for diabetes. That's the title of the film, but you can reverse almost any illness. Now, I will say Lyme disease is very, very tricky, very difficult. Depends on where you are at with the illness. You could probably, put it on the back burner, I guess you could say, if it's diagnosed early. It's probably still in your body and it will rear its ugly head if you're totally stressed out, or you might get another illness like COVID, for example, or any of the variants. It may happen. You might have it already. And then something else happens, or you get bit by another tick, because that's how it starts, from a tick. It's passed on different ways. It can be passed on from mother to child. It can be passed on through blood transfusions, all different ways. The tick itself, running in the family, like I said. So some of these things are controversial, I will say that. But if you do your own due diligence, your own research, you'll find some studies on it. Another key with Lyme disease is they can't sleep at night, totally have a hard time sleeping. Electronics bother them, lights bother them, things that are too loud. So they have sensitivity, hearing. So that's some other things. So as for me, I grew up in Massachusetts. Like I said, worked in a prison for 22 years. A couple of years ago, I moved to North Carolina, and I've been rebuilding my business since. I've been on Herstory a couple of times. So like I said, this was kind of a last minute thing, but more than happy to share my story and what I've gone through, if it can help someone else. And even if I'm not all made up and all of that. So I'm just appreciative to Gertrude for having me on today. And I apologize for being a little bit tongue twisted. I was not ready, but hopefully this helps someone.
Always ready, Paula. Thank you for sharing your story. You know, that's what I love about the women in the Her Story Circle. We're not about looks, we're about sharing a message that can help somebody else. And today you've done more than just help me. The knowledge that you are sharing is going to help somebody who has an autoimmune disease. So let's just talk a little bit about the things that you've learned along the way.
Mm-hmm.
You talk a lot about gut health. I want to just touch on that. A lot of people aren't aware that our gut is responsible for a lot of the manifestations we see as illness.
Yes.
And how can one go in and balance out those imbalances that are in your gut? Talk a little bit to that for us for a few minutes.
Sure. So, like I said earlier, the biggest culprit for me was gluten, and I wasn't digesting it. That's one thing. So if you're not digesting it, you're going to eat other foods, and then you're just going to hold on to that. It's going to stay in your body, and then that will contribute to other illnesses. Wherever, all that's backing up, if you're not eliminating waste, it's going to contribute to other illnesses. It could be cancer. It could just be IBS or, digestive problems or food allergies like happened to me. Candida if you have too much sugar, those types of things. So what can you do about it? Stop eating gluten, number one. Get rid of, those heavy processed foods. Start to, if you can't just eliminate it, cut down on it. We don't know what other variants are coming down the line. They're already saying China's locked in and all this stuff's going on. Start boosting your immune system now so you don't have to worry about whatever is coming down the line, But yeah, with your gut it's everything. If your gut's not in check, it's going to affect everything. It's going to make you tired if your gut's not in check. You're not going to be able to lose weight. And it's going to make you more susceptible to other illnesses like Lyme disease, cancer, all these types of things. You've got to eliminate what you've got in your body.
Man. So the gut is important. What you're putting into your intestines is important. So that's number one. You also talked about being aware of the kinds of foods you're eating, right?
Yeah. So
Give
on
us
another
a
note,
checklist of things you can eliminate right now that will make a difference to your health.
Yeah, of course. So I like to look at food two different ways. All we ever hear is what's bad for us. So I'll give you a list of, things that do contribute to things like joint pain, or being bloated, those types of things. But you want to also look at food as what is good for you, like what's helping you, like water, for instance. If you just get water right now in a lot of areas, depending on where you are, it's allergy season. So a lot of people are going to panic thinking it's the variant, whatever. Don't panic. It might just be allergies. Start drinking more water. Water helped me tremendously with my allergies. I wouldn't sniffle and sneeze as much as soon as I got more water in. It produces more histamines when you're dehydrated. So don't drink as much coffee this time of year. Don't get as much caffeine. That dehydrates you. So that's something you can do. The foods that do contribute to inflammation, which contributes to joint pain, are the nightshades. Those are tomatoes, peppers, eggplant, potatoes, things like your tomato sauce. Acidic foods contribute to inflammation, which contributes to things like joint pain. That would be your dairy, like milk, cheese, chocolate, things we love. Alcohol, those types of things. Sugar, all those types of things are acidic. Those contribute to inflammation in the body, which will, once you're inflamed, you're either not going to lose weight or you're going to have things like joint pain.
Okay. And these are very simple things. We take advantage of water, but they say
Mm-hmm.
that 90% of our body is water, right?
Yep.
So if we keep flushing it out and just drinking, I mean, I've got to a point now where unless I've got my water bottle near me, I forget to drink water during the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So just constantly reminding myself by waking up in the morning, first thing I get is my bottle of water. I was also reading somewhere that in Asia, before people eat anything, they drink a glass of water first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Before you put anything into your digestive system, just drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning also helps with all of your health issues. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Lyme disease
Sure.
and how it starts. Until I met you, I had heard about it. I had no idea how it manifests, what causes it. So let's go right back to the beginning, the cause, the symptoms, in case
Sure.
there's somebody who's not feeling very well, and then how somebody can address those issues.
Okay. So yeah. So Lyme disease. It starts from a tick, and they really kind of discovered it in Lyme, Connecticut, because they were getting the tick bites from there was deer there that had the ticks. So they were getting tick bites from the deer that lived in that area. And they were winding up with like rheumatoid arthritis type of thing.
Mhm.
So they didn't know what was going on. So that's kind of how Lyme disease came about. But it starts from a tick bite. But like I said, it can be running in families. So if mom got bit by a tick and then mom has a child, that could be in that child. So there are things that are controversial about it, but there are studies saying that it's happening, like being sexually transmitted. It can be, it's controversial, but I know so many people that their entire family has Lyme disease. Like, how is it being passed on? You have to ask yourself. I know one
Mm.
woman, one of my friends, she's got 19 members of her family that have it. I'd go to all the group meetings in Massachusetts. So, like, one woman, her and her husband have it, her 3 kids have it. Another woman, her and her husband have it, her 6 kids have it. She had to homeschool all 6 kids. Um, so it's just running rampant in families. So you just have to ask yourself, do your own homework, do your own research. You don't have to take what I'm saying as etched in stone, so to say, but you just do your own research. I mean, how else are they getting it? We also believe some people, I believe the tick, it's got some kind of sense in your body that once it's in your body, maybe the acidic aspect of your body, I don't know. But we believe the ticks like find you if it's in your body, and then they get bit again, and then they're really down for the count because they've already had it in their body. Whether they were born with it or they're bit and then get bit again, it really makes a difference. But
Hmm.
so yeah, so some of the symptoms I talked about earlier, headaches is a big one, neck pain in the back of the neck, hip pain because it affects the joints, knee pain. Some people have stroke type symptoms like Bell's palsy, TMJ or like lockjaw. Can't remember things like dementia, Tourette syndrome, kidney problems, believe it or not. It affects everything. But the biggest symptoms are usually like dementia like qualities, especially for somebody who's young. You're like, what's going on?
Mm.
Sometimes anger. It's like a Lyme rage. They get OCD, like very obsessed with things. And anger. They have anger issues. It's not their fault. It's something the way it affects the brain. Like I said, we call it Lyme brain when they can't remember something. Some people can't even remember how to get home. My friend Darlene couldn't remember how to get home. Another woman in the group said, thank God for GPS. She couldn't remember how to get home. These people are young. They're in their 40s. So those types of things are symptoms. So usually you'll get diagnosed. If you get any diagnosed at all, it'll be like fibromyalgia or MS, lupus. Lupus and Lyme are very similar. Again, I'm not a doctor. I cannot say if they're one and the same, but they do have very similar symptoms. So all
Right.
these autoimmune issues kind of fall into the same umbrella. And if you can't get diagnosed and you don't want to get obsessed with getting diagnosed, then I say let's just get you feeling better. So like we said, kind of stop eating the gluten, the things that contribute to inflammation, the sugar, these types of things.
So just being very aware, every single thing you put in your mouth can potentially impact on how you're going to feel.
Right.
Yeah, and the thing is, some of the symptoms of these diseases are so similar.
Right.
It's hard to differentiate which is which.
Right. That's why I said I am not a doctor. Maybe someday we'll have a doctor come on here and they can say this is the exact difference between the two. Maybe it's, the way the cells are. I have no idea. I'm not a doctor. But they're just so similar. Lots of similar symptoms. And for some reason, I don't know why, I'm seeing more people that are African American get diagnosed with lupus than Lyme disease. Why that is, I don't know. Like I said, we need a real doctor to say, why is that? Why are they saying it's lupus in African Americans and not Lyme disease? I don't know. I don't have
Interesting.
But if you're a doctor out there, we want to know. We want to know.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So what are the different ways that you are helping people with all of these issues?
Yep. So I do one-on-one coaching, group coaching. I'm available for speaking engagements. Like I said, I've talked on here a few times, so I'm thankful for that. I've put together ebooks and recipe books. Those are on my website, enrichyourhealth.com, which it's right up there. You can go to the store. I've got a free ebook on reversing illness, which gives a lot of these tips and more. And a 6-day immunity meal plan guide. You might want that for who knows what's coming down the line. And just get in touch with me. You can email me. You can call or text me. I'm on social media, just right under my name on Facebook. You can Facebook message me, or Instagram, just under my first and last name. You can connect with me there as well. And I do have a group called Enrich Your Health and Life. That's easy to find. That's a Facebook group. Love for you to join there. Yeah.
Fantastic. This is awesome. You are just a walking textbook of ideas. And I know that you contributed to the anthology series for Herstory as well. So your book is out.
Yes.
And people can get that on our website, on the Herstory Circle's website. Well, have you got it on your website as well?
Yeah, it's on my website as well as yours, Gertrude. Yeah, it's right here. I can hold it up. Let's see.
Yeah, that would be good so people can see what you have done so far.
So let me hold it up.
It's awesome to see these books coming out all over the world. Fantastic. And the title is?
So it's called But God, I Am Still Here. And like I said earlier, it's, for my part of it, there's 9 other amazing women in it, but for my part of it, it talks about how many times the enemy has tried to take me out since birth. And I just go into all the details. But there was also 9 other amazing women in this book, and their stories they blew me away. Really. The things that they've conquered and overcome and were victorious about. I was practically in tears reading their stories as well. So you want to get the book. If you need inspiration, motivation, there's a couple holidays coming up, especially Mother's Day. Somebody who's been kind of down and depressed and I don't know, whatever it might be. They lost their job or they're just not kind of feeling lost, whatever it might be, or if they've gone through something and they need something to lift them up. This book will do it. And I'm not just talking about because of my story. It's about all the stories that are in there. This book will help somebody, absolutely, or more than one. And I'll tell you this, there's a lot of warfare with this book, as you know, Gertrude. Just releasing it and getting it out there. And usually when there's warfare like that, that means it's meant to help someone. So that's the reason behind it. So I'll tell you that.
I love it.
The enemy didn't want the book out. I will tell you that. So,
Absolutely awesome, Paula.
yeah.
Thank you. And thank you again for jumping in when one of my speakers has come down with COVID today and wasn't able to step in. And I would love to reconnect with you and see if you can run a workshop during the month of April.
Okay.
So send me an email towards the end of the month. Right now, everything is crazy.
I
I've got
yeah.
Ruth is ill as well. So things haven't been perfect. So if I don't respond, it's just because I'm inundated. But let's connect and schedule for you to run a workshop in the month of April.
Okay, that would be awesome. I look forward to it. Thank you for having me again. Thank you guys for watching. Again, I apologize for my appearance. I didn't
You
know I
look
was stepping up
gorgeous,
last minute.
Paula. Take care, darling. Thank you so much.
Yep, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Oh, wow. I feel really blessed at all of these amazing women who are in my circle. This morning, I had this crisis. One of my speakers has called in ill, and I reached out to a few of our community members on Facebook. And my next guest is another amazing human being who responded straight away. Nishi, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
Hi, good day, Gertrude. How are you doing? Can you hear me well?
I can hear you perfectly. It's absolutely
Yes.
wonderful to have you with us today. I'm just going to
Absolutely.
read out your bio and give a little introduction as to who you are. So, Nishi Parkinson is a motivational speaker. And if I'm mispronouncing your name, do correct me. I hate mispronouncing people's names. Am I saying it right?
Yes, you're doing it correct. Yes.
Okay, good. Let's get that right. So, she is a motivational speaker, a certified life coach, a trainer, a facilitator, an activist, and the founder of Nishi Speaks STL 2018. She's an active member of the Positive Women's Network in USA, Missouri State led. And as an active member, she's been invited by Dr. Laura Shiva, the Department of Associate Administrator and the Chief Medical Officer of the HIV and AIDS Bureau at the Health Resources and Services Administration. So Nishi has an amazing story. When I first met her, the one thing I thought to myself is, I wish I had met you when my brother was still alive. So my brother died of HIV-related complications. And Nishi, your story inspired me so much. I have shared it with so many people I know around the world. The stage is yours. I'm going to let you speak for as long as you want to. When you're ready for me to step in, just say so. And we'll have a Q&A session just like I did with Paula. You've done this before, you know the drill. Thank you for gracing us with your presence this morning.
I want to say good day to the listening audience on Facebook or Zoom or wherever you may be in the world. Yes, Gertrude, I want to say thank you for that phenomenal introduction. Yes, I am Nishi Parkinson, founder and CEO of Nishi Speaks STL in the Midwest of the United States. I am a Black woman, unapologetic, living with HIV. I am thriving and empowering women and men to know their statuses, to use their voice to amplify the education and the knowledge around HIV lived experiences. As Gertrude has mentioned, I had an opportunity to work with the Health Resource Administration to tell my story about HIV treatment and catalyzing HIV services for people living with HIV. One of my due diligence in the world is to just empower individuals to give them the lived experience of how you can cultivate and live your life as a Black woman in your own skin, you know, working, taking care of family, and nurturing individuals in the world. Yes, I am a certified life coach. So what that means is I help empower people daily with my influence, with my lived experiences, with my language, with my knowledge that I carry throughout the world. You know, 40 years ago, people thought HIV was a death sentence because that was what the societal things of the acknowledges of what we did not know HIV as it to be. Now that we are 40 years forward, I have been given the opportunity over the last 25 years in my lived experiences to educate people about HIV 101 and how individuals contract HIV and also how you can protect yourself. I am a single mom of a 19-year-old. And, you know, when I was diagnosed in 1997, they told us that we would not be able to have children. We would not be able to further our education, purchase homes, cars, and things of that nature. But I'm here to tell the world that you can do anything that you want to put your mind to, and a diagnosis does not define who you are. It has meaning, it has value, and it also has struggles. With that being said, challenging your lived experiences to be the best person that you can possibly be. While I am a Black woman, an African American woman living in the Midwest, I was able to successfully have a daughter back in 2002 who is HIV negative. I am on treatment 100% of the time, and I take my medications daily, and that is one pill a day. And with that,
Nishi, something has happened to your sound. Nishi, something's happened to the sound. We can't hear you. Nishi, let me see. I'll call her on Facebook. I think she's not aware. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. The sound is gone.
I get blank. Gertrude, can you hear me now?
Okay, you're back. I just wanted to make you aware. Oops, she's dropped off. Yeah, something happened there. Let's see. It must be Nishi's connection. We'll give her a few minutes. So Paula, you couldn't hear her too. Thank you for making me aware of that. So it was inspiring when I first met Nishi. She was one of the first women that I had ever met who was living so positively with HIV. In Africa, there was a lot of stigma around this disease. I lost a lot of family members during the AIDS pandemic. And when you meet somebody who has defied all the odds, you know, Paula was talking about, you know, taking charge of your health. One of the things that I've learned from Nishi is not believing what you are sold by the so-called health professionals. Any disease is like cancer. Your mindset is going to play a very large role in whether you make it and survive the challenge you've had or not. So how many times have you been told that you have X number of days to live? If you believe it, you will check out in that time because part of your belief system will get you to that point. And that's what I love about Nishi. She defies all the odds. Everything they told her, she decided to believe it wasn't true. And she's here to share her story with us and make us aware that you just have to be positive. Positivity is everything. Your mindset is everything. So I'm hoping she gets to come back. I'm not sure what the technical issue could be. In the meantime, let me find another speaker who could potentially step in and give maybe a 10-minute presentation while we wait for Nishi to restore herself and get back online. That's the thing about technology. It's great when it works, it's terrible when it doesn't work. So let's have a listen to Dr. Terry Levine while we're waiting for Nishi to come back. Dr. Levine has graced our stage before. Oh, there she is. You're back. You're back. I was about to play a short video. So let's see if we can hear your sound. Say something.
Good day, everyone from around the
Uh-huh.
world. All righty.
Excellent. We can hear you. So I'm going to exit. So go back a couple of phrases because we lost you there towards the end.
Alrighty. So, with my lived experiences as a woman, I was able to conceive a healthy baby girl back in 2002 with power and grace. Back when HIV was first on the scene in 1997, they told us that us as women would not be able to have children. So I am so grateful to be able to have a child that is 19 years old that is HIV negative, and she is doing well. She is a phenomenal woman, a phenomenal young woman, young teenager. Following in the footsteps of her mom, going into healthcare as her career scope. So we want to give a shout out to her. Kudos, lived experiences and walking through trauma and being a student of a parent that is affected. She is so resilient in her creed. So I want to just say thank you to her for always standing by the sidelines, cheering me on. She's my first lady, as I call her. Also, what I wanted to bring to the table is a lot of times we don't want to talk about sexual health and what sexual health really means to individuals who want to partake in sexual health. Being healthy, you started out doing those things when you were a young kiddo. Your mom would take you in to get your routine vaccinations, get your height, your weight, your temperature check, blood pressure, things of that nature. So that was a caveat of growing up in most homes, that you would do a healthy check-in just to get registered for elementary school or preschool or daycare. It was afforded a guideline that we have to keep ourselves healthy. So a lot of times people associate, the unprecedented times with healthcare, such as our COVID-19 and our HIV statuses. A lot of times, yes, it affects our immune system. And in order to keep your immune system very, very healthy, as an individual living with HIV, you have to come in and get, those blood work checks. You could get it done every 6 months or annually, depending on what relationship you have built with your provider. And checking in on yourself ultimately keeps you healthy, in regards to your heart, your liver, your abdomen, your digestive tract, all of the things that we need to do as human beings to keep us healthy. So HIV is similar, health disparities that we have to walk through to keep ourselves safe. And also know your partners. A lot of times people don't know who their partners are, or it could be a one night rendezvous or sexual encounter with someone, and you haven't had the chance to take a loved one to the doctor concept. So make sure that you know your partners 100% of the time when you're integrating into a sexual practice or a sexual act. A lot of times sex is taboo. It is not spoken about in most households, or young kiddos or young teenagers learn about their sexual health through their friends, TV, radio, songs, social medias, and things of that nature. So sometimes they could get myths versus facts. And we really want to make sure that they have all of the credible facts in knowing who they are, for one, knowing what the guidelines is on sexual health. You always can go to the cdc.gov. They have a plethora of resources out there for people to learn about sexual health, HIV, COVID-19, STIs, sexually transmitted infections, and things of that nature. Diabetes, hepatitis, all of those are social determinants of health that we must check in with our physicians, our GYN doctors, to make sure that we're doing what is adequate for us. In terms of all of that, I am 44 years of age, and I have lived, 2 decades being a woman living with HIV. And what I can say, over a period of time, I was able to graduate with my associate's degree. I was able to graduate with my bachelor's degree in liberal studies. And I have been able to be a support for so many individuals who have had lived experiences around their diagnosis, being newly diagnosed, being affected. Family members and friends have come thus far to, just hear who I am and my story. This journey has not been easy. I would never tell you that this was an easy journey for me, but it was a lot of lessons learned on this road. And really, the main factor that individuals who are living with HIV or any medical condition, it is a trust factor. It's building a trust factor with your support system that you may have. And if you have a family member that would like to be open about his or her status, I would also recommend that families be active listeners versus judgment. Judgment allows individuals to crawl under a rock. So HIV thought it had me and it wanted me to crawl under this rock. And I am the rock today. So I want you all to understand that being a support mechanism for someone who has a lived experience in any medical condition, they will need your support. Be an ally. Understand that education is the key to not judge an individual. And yes, there is a preventional medication that you can take, and it is called Truvada, and it needs to be administered under a physician's recommendation, and it's called PrEP. So it's a prophylactic for women or men to take 100% of the time to prevent HIV. So what I want you to do is just check in with your physicians, ask them, is there a medication that you can prevent HIV to be safer when you're having sexual encounters with your partner, or married individuals, single individuals, teenagers. Go ahead and check in and make sure that you are doing it right. This is the only way that we can reduce people from being exposed to HIV, is knowing the facts, using the facts, and doing the facts. Also, we recommend that any individual that is having sexual encounters walk into your physician or health department, get your test done. It usually takes about 5 minutes, and we can do early detection within roughly 9 to 10 days after intercourse. So you would know your status fairly quickly. And when I was diagnosed in 1997, it took 2 weeks to get your diagnosis back. So look how far we've come from with the technology that we have in the world to make the world a better place. Now, I'm looking at this topic that Gertrude came up with, or her team, the power of giving. Today, I'm giving you your flowers today to live more abundantly in your skin, in your world, in your own body, because we want you to use the facts, know the facts, and do the facts. We also want you to make sure that the power of giving is giving back, and how you can give back for yourself, your family, and your loved ones that love you so dearly is to go check into your physician to make sure that you are okay. You matter. You are a phenomenal person. You can live however you choose, but make sure that you prioritize your health, your heart, your head, and your entire body. Checking in on your vision, your hearing, your dental care, GYN, well man visits, and also making sure that you check in with your gynecologist, ladies. I can't specify that enough. Checking in on you. You are the meology of giving back to the power that you control. And this is one part of your life that you can absolutely control. It's no one else. responsibility but you. Also, the power of giving back. A lot of times people feel back.
Looks like Nishi's sound is gone again. Nishi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
All I can say is giving back, the power of giving. When you give back with the power that you have, make sure, a lot of times people think this is an unsexy word, but giving back the power to your family to make sure that you are properly protected with life insurance. And that is one key takeaway from this moment here. When we talk about health, we should also talk about life insurance because we know we have the power to save ourselves in that magnitude. So, giving back with your health, knowing your status, your life insurance, and loving on you today, that is what matters. You've heard the word from Nishi Speaks. And if you have any questions or answers or any dialogue that you would like to have with me in the near future, don't hesitate to reach out to Gertrude at herstorycircles.com. Thank you, Gertrude.
Wonderful. Nishi, thank you so much. Thank you for your nuggets of wisdom. What fascinates me about you is that you've lived through 2 pandemics now. I want you to go back to the 80s, 90s AIDS pandemic, the experiences you had. Let's talk about what were the challenges, the discrimination, the lack of knowledge at that time. And we're seeing it repeat all over again right now with this pandemic. Take us back to what was your experience and how it's comparing to what's going on now.
I would say these are 2 twin pandemics because of stigma. You know, stigma is the root of a silent killer. It isolates you, it keeps you from people. And stigma is a forefront carrier of an immune suppressor. It suppresses your immune system tremendously. I have talked to numerous of people who are diagnosed with HIV, and they feared coming outdoors to even get groceries, to go to the doctor, to get gas, just to take a walk in the parking lot, you know, to just get fresh air, because they thought that, you know, COVID was airborne, you know, so they shielded themselves because they knew that they had walked through 38 years of living HIV positive, and they wanted to outlive COVID. I recently had several losses over the last 2 years. And the first woman that I want to pay homage to is Dolores Dockery. She was a profound, she-wrote, fierce woman in the world of every quality improvement efforts, collaborations for women living with HIV. And she passed away in 2020. And she was the first story that I heard of a young woman living with HIV passing away. And it was a detriment to my mind. It was a detriment to my spirit and my soul, because we were working on several projects together during that week that she passed away. And I was speechless. And, you know, Gertrude, we walking through this pandemic coming up on our 3rd year, and we're still losing lives. We're still being isolated, even though some people are traveling and going outside and trying to gather with their families. It's still a scary time. A lot of people are still not vaccinated, or they may have gotten the first shot and not the second shot, or got the first shot, second shot, and did not get the booster because they were fearing, you know, a lot of myths versus facts when the deliberation of what COVID was and how to stay safe, and we didn't know. So that's why I call it a twin pandemic, because in the late 80s, we did not know. I lost an aunt in 1994 to age-related illnesses. And my mom and my family, they kind of hid it a little bit from us because they did not want us to find out her status. But ultimately, we did find out that she passed away from age-related illnesses as a young woman in our community. She was one of the first women living with HIV in St. Louis. And her legacy was women need to know, and why women needed to know their statuses, and how could they help another young woman. So when we look at this, where do we fit and who do we look like are the two main things, because COVID-19 is a human virus. HIV is a human virus. You contract it from people. So how do we help people stay educated? It's so many different people that are in the community that are still isolated 2 years forward, or don't want to return to work because of the fear of contracting COVID.
Yeah, what really blows me away is the big difference that I've spotted is that there's going to be a heightened sense of empathy going out into the world. When I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, HIV was an African problem. It was happening to the majority of us, especially in Southern Africa. And I remember when I came to New Zealand, I talked about going to a funeral the week before I came. One of my cousins had died. And I went to the same graveyard a week later to bury a second cousin. And I went with 2 bunches of flowers, thinking I would go and leave flowers on the previous grave. And I had to walk 2 kilometers to find the grave that we put down a week before. So all of these images that we've seen online of the mass graves, the numbers of people who've died across the world, we lived through this in the 80s and 90s. And when I used to share this story here in New Zealand, Australia, I could see people's eyes kind of glazing over, like I was not telling the truth, like it was some kind of a fiction story I was making up. And this was my family. My grandmother had 11 children. She had 34 grandchildren. 19 of my first cousins died of HIV-related diseases. Wow. And so we're living through it all over again. But the biggest difference is everybody in the world is affected by this pandemic. And we're literally a breath away from affecting and infecting each other. So people being aware of the importance of going out and getting vaccinated, getting that booster once you've had the first 2 vaccines done. You're not just doing it for yourself, but you're doing it to protect other people in your house, in your community, and in the world at large. Because right now, if one person in the world is not okay, we're all not okay.
Exactly.
Paul, I asked you to jump in here. Please contribute to the conversation. I know that this is one of your passion projects as well, because you're focused on health.
Yeah, so I just want to say, Nishi, thank you for sharing your story. Where are you located?
I am in the heart of St. Louis, Missouri, in the Midwest.
Okay.
So we freeze and we bake here.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just curious. Yeah, I grew up in the 80s also. I was born in 1967. So I remember when AIDS was it was a big deal. We were scared that, we were going to get it. We were really scared of it. Or HIV positive. I mean, we were very cautious of that. We were more scared of that than getting pregnant.
Exactly.
Believe it or not. Yeah. And it seems to be coming back around. So it's interesting. I don't know if it has something to do with these vaccines or not. But it seems to be coming back around. So it's good that they have good treatment for it now. That's not as
Absolutely,
scary.
Paula. Yeah. I can say this, we still have to go back to the basics when we are attempting to correlate data and to, do surveillance in the world of both pandemics. I believe that now we can still do more to ramp up testing in both areas, but we have to be strategic in our approach. We have to make sure that when we come from one data set, we get it all. If we have them come in for COVID testing, do HIV testing, and then do the triple dip testing of all 3 key sites for the women and for the men, and make sure that we are able to effectively get back in contact with the individual and try to drill down that partner notification as well, in a private setting and confidential setting, so that we can make sure that the partners are being tested as well. Because we know that the love bug triangle, it collects in clusters.
Right.
It's not just a one woman show or one man show. It is identified in clusters. So if you have a group of individuals that is having sex with the same individual, and that individual is not getting treated properly, then amongst that group of individuals who are having that love bug triangle, ultimately all of the individuals will become infected with some type of STI or lived experience of some sort.
How did you know you had HIV? Did you have symptoms? What happened?
No symptoms at all.
Wow.
Walked in for my well woman exam and I asked to be tested. So that's why I was adamant in my delivery. You must walk in and see your gynecologist. You're not going to knock on the door and the door is going to open and say I'm negative or positive. You have to get the actual test done. That's the only way that you can get treated successfully or know your status. And then you got to know how to stay healthy among all things.
Wow.
And I was 17. I'm 44 now.
You were 17.
Mm-hmm.
That's an act of God.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. We had to wait 2 weeks for a result.
You had
and the
no
bottom
symptoms. Nothing.
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing.
Wow.
You're very lucky, Nishi, because that's what a lot of people don't realize, that being HIV positive does not mean you're going to die. It means you just have to take better care of yourself. Once you're aware of it, there's certain things you have to do to keep your immune system boosted.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the tragedy with my baby brother. I've
Okay.
told you my story before.
Mm-hmm.
He gave up. He was told he was positive. His mindset went to the worst place.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't even fight it in the end. And it took him down. And the medication at that time, you can imagine in Africa, we had the 3rd generation medication. So he was drinking 60 to 70 tablets a day. And of the worst medication, it was harsh. It really got to his liver. I actually think that the drugs killed him in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And we were being used as guinea pigs to experiment with these cocktails that they were producing at the time.
Absolutely, Gertrude. And you know what, Paula, in 1996, let me explain this for you and the audience. Let me set it up. In 1996, my grandfather had passed away. And we were preparing for his services. And all of the family was over at the house. And I ended up falling, coming up the steps. So when I fell, I hit my knee. And I had to be rushed to the hospital because they said I had bumped my femur bone because I would not stop laughing. Well, when I got to the hospital, they had drew, I want to say maybe 20 to 40 cc's of fluid off my right knee. And they had said that I had had a rare STI in my knee, but they couldn't tell me what it was at that time. It was like my body and my immune system was trying to fight off the infection.
Mm-hmm.
And they said it's 1 in 5 million people would get this like this in their knee. So I do believe in 1996 of that ending year in December to July of 1997, when I actually got the test done, I was in seroconverting mode because if you count up the months, it was that 6-month window period that they spoke of when HIV first came on the scene.
Wow.
So now we know through testing, robust testing over these last 40 years, that PrEP, the prophylactics that we can take for an individual to reduce the risk of transmitting HIV from a partner, or if they know the partner is positive or not, that reduces it greatly for that person to continue to be negative. And then we have PEP, which is the prophylactic if you are exposed within 72 hours of going into an emergency room setting, you can be administered that. Or if you are a rape victim of some sort, you will be administered that within 72 hours so that it can kind of reduce the transmission from partner to victim.
Now, being a life coach, is there, like, do you have a specific niche with that? Like people that are ill or anything like that, or?
Oh, the genre of life coaching. It is never the same, the day or the week, nor the hour. I do most of my life coaching in the evenings after 5 p.m. Or on the weekend based on appointments. And sometimes, most of the time, I get individuals who are caregivers of an elderly parent or parents. I get young women who are learning how to date or kind of look at the signs of what dating looks like for them. And then I get some women that are in contemplation mode of divorce or separation. The health disparity pieces usually come from word of mouth. Say, for instance, somebody knows that I'm positive and they have a friend that they want to introduce, and I will allow that individual to introduce me to them through Zoom, and then we will bridge our life coaching from there.
Yeah, I would definitely say you're a good life coach for somebody who's dealing with, it doesn't even have to be HIV.
Correct.
Just that positiveness of, like, with Lyme disease, a lot of them think they get, and it's understandable, woe me, and, I'm never going to get better. And, they're very negative, they need a positive person to help them change their mindset about it,
It's navigating your chaos,
Yeah.
How do you maintain under the radar?
Right.
And when you're maintaining under the radar, what does that mirror really look like for you? And how can you accept the things that you cannot change? How do you conquer being fierce? Because you have a fierce being in you somewhere that wants to elevate and be empowered, but sometimes you don't see it. Sometimes you have to write it down, put it on a visionary piece of paper, do circles and apples and oranges, and you put your pros over here, you put your cons over here, you put your weakness over here, you put your strengths over here. So when you see it on paper or drew out in like a Miro board, then you're able to attack those things that you want to do, small, medium, and large. Because you got to plan it out, you got to do it, you got to study it, you got to act. And if something don't go right, you change it. You do a red light, green light, and yellow light. So if you got stuff in the caution area, that's stuff that you're going to be working on for the next 90 days, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, give or take. But ultimately, you have to chunk it up in small pieces because Rome wasn't built in a day. And if our higher being, God, showed us an hourglass of everything that he had forthcoming for us, we would not be able to accept all of that.
I think the other piece that's needed too, Nishi, is, you said you helped a caregiver. I think a lot of people that are ill, their family members don't know how to handle it. That's really needed.
Correct. Absolutely.
That's really needed.
Correct. And it's not easy being a caregiver because you're managing your own life and then you're managing someone else's life. Yeah. And, with caregivers, they deal with their parent maybe having dementia or Alzheimer's or memory loss or vision loss, hearing impairment, so you have to know kind of how to make those reasonable accommodations fit. And the analogies that we think of, because we are moving and shaking and we're doing the things that we need to do robustly in our world, we have to, phase it back just a little bit for them to build the concept or anger, to regain those concepts.
Yeah. They get angry too. The
Frustrated,
person,
yes.
yeah, anger,
Yes.
depression.
Yes.
Yeah, how do you
Yes.
handle that? It can't be easy.
That depression is a real mental health is, if I could say anything today on this live, mental health, we need more money into mental health so that
Absolutely.
we can help individuals help themselves.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
yeah. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday or the day before, a gentleman was actively on the bridge here in St. Louis getting ready to jump. And the crisis intervention police officers were able to talk him down
Oh, thank
and get
God.
him to the nearest hospital so that he could get help. So
Wow.
it's stories like that that we need to make go viral so that the mental health, our Congress, our legislation, our government can understand that the more money that we have in mental health is the way that we can reduce violence, crime, carjackings, you know, all of the things that are social determinants of health. Homelessness is a big thing, you know, and substance abuse users, you know, that is another big thing for social determinants of health. And we don't have enough access in those areas for people to thrive.
I agree.
Now, Nishi, you mentioned men's health.
Mm.
You know, as women, we're very proactive in looking after ourselves, but men, a lot of men suffer in silence. They wait until the last minute before they step forward and say, hey, I need help. What can be done in that area? I'm just wanting to bring this to the table for us as women to be able to support our men folk so they look after themselves better, especially now.
I truly, truly, truly think that every male that is watching this today, I think you should take charge of who you are. You are the leaders that we are looking for to actively engage in our self-worth as women. And a lot of times we know that you are missed on the spectrum of all things. But I can say this, make sure you check in with your physicians on your heart health, your men wellness, and how can we best activate you being in safe spaces to talk about the things that are traumatizing to you. Or if you're dealing with your mental health, how can we help you as a woman? To remove the judgment, because a lot of times men are judged less than. We see you, Black men. We see you, white men. We see you, Haitian men. We see you, African men. So we love you, but come into our spaces so that we can thrive with you. When there's one good woman, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 men to follow. And we want to follow you. It is not who you are, it's the things that we did that put us at risk. And all of us are at risk of something, even if it's social determinants of health, economic shortfall, lack of language, lack of love. We're honest enough to say, as women today, we give you power and we speak power over you today, as we give the power of giving. And we have these difficult conversations amongst all of us. And I want to say thank you, Gertrude, for shedding light for the male perspective, because a lot of times they're weakened or they're pushed down or shunned. But we embrace you today. And if you need to flourish even further, Gertrude and Herstory Circles can provide a platform for you, and curated by Gertrude, Nishi Speaks, and any other woman that wants to jump on this platform with us to make a male space. So I challenge each and every male species in the world to be connected in your own creed and to love on you and to be the sunshine that we want. I know there are some great women out there that's looking for some great men to be in the space just to curate lived experiences, no matter where you come from. So with technology that we have today, I'm sure we have a big enough platform to invite you into the space. Ashe.
That we definitely do, Nishi. Thank you so much. So we are asking men to step up to the plate. You know, until we start meeting in the same space, whether you're having a conference, a women's conference, a men's conference, we need to do it together. We can't exist in silos and exist on our own. Yesterday, we had a very interesting speaker who was very passionate about his subject. He came and just shared from the heart. It was very, very moving. We need more men to step up and be heard. So thank you so much, ladies. This has been amazing connecting with both of you this morning. Thank you for gracing us with your knowledge, your experiences. It's in the sharing of these stories that we change the world, one woman at a time, one story at a time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gertrude. Thank you for putting me on at the last minute.
Thank you. And Paula, it is wonderful to meet you.
You
Gertrude has
too.
my contact information if you would ever love to keep in contact.
Yes.
Gertrude, you are a phenomenal curator of Herstories. I remember the first day that you launched in the conversations that we had. Don't give up on me. I'm coming even further forward.
I know. Thank you, ladies. Thank you so much. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our next speaker. So I'm actually speaking at an event myself in a few minutes. So I had prepared a set of videos that will play while I'm at the event. So I'm kind of... So the next speaker is Dr. Terry Levin. So Terry Levin is a best-selling author, a business consultant, an executive coaching expert, and the founder of Herpreneur. She assists businesses worldwide with business growth, sales, and marketing. She has more than 40 years of business experience, encompassing working with more than 5,000 business owners and entrepreneurs in various industries. She turbocharges their businesses, increasing their revenue and profits and their success. So, Dr. Levin, thank you so much for being a part of our movement. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your knowledge. We will watch your video next. And ladies, feel free to stay as long as you want. It has been absolutely amazing just having you with me here today. It makes such a difference when I have a live audience when we do this.
Hi, my name is Dr. Terry Levine. I am 63 years young. Part of the year I live in Pennsylvania. I'm in Northwest Pennsylvania right now in the United States. Part of the year I live in my home in Atlantic City, New Jersey. And part of the year I live in my other home in Playa del Carmen, Mexico. So this is my story. I worked in corporate America for many years. I was CEO of a national healthcare company.
Okay.
And I went to work every day miserable. Can you relate? Every single day miserable. In fact, Sunday evenings, I would have what I call the Sunday evening dreads. I would dread going to work on Monday morning. I got paid a high six-figure salary with stock options and bonuses. I was told I was really good at what I did. The company liked me. And yet, I wasn't happy and satisfied. There was something missing, a passion. And one day I had a wake-up call. And here's what happened. My mother passed away of emphysema. Now, my mother was my best friend on the planet. 7 days later, my friend, Marnie Hope Reesberg, died at the age of 40 of breast cancer. Marnie said something profound to me while I was on the phone with her while she was in hospice. I was with my mom and couldn't go be with Marnie. And what Marnie said to me was, Terry, Life is more important than work. I know, she said, people will stand up at my funeral and they will talk about all the things that I accomplished at work. And I want you to know that I sacrificed living my life, living my passion, and having time freedom, and instead gave that away to an employer. That hit me. It really hit me. Shortly after that, I decided, let me find my own passion. I created a process that I called Work Yourself Happy. Actually, it was the name of my first book, Work Yourself Happy. And I literally realized that my passion was helping people create businesses out of doing what they love. And that I was going to do that for myself, because prior to working in corporate America, I had been an entrepreneur, creating my own successful businesses and loving my life. So I quit my job and I started my coaching and consulting business about 30 years ago. So I want you for a moment just to imagine, and maybe you, like me, were going to work every single day, or are, and you're really not happy and you're not satisfied. Maybe you're asking yourself, what the heck is life for? And then I had kind of a dramatic wake-up call. Maybe your wake-up call is right now. Maybe from today forward, you can live the rest of your life doing what you love and loving what you do. What I love to do is help other people find their passion. Like, what is that thing that they're really excited about, that they want to help other people? They want to pass it forward. Whether it's, I want to help other people with their health and wellness or their relationships. What is the skill, talent, or expertise that you have? I realized that mine was helping women create not just high income businesses, truly businesses that gave them a life and a lifestyle. Time freedom. Oh my gosh, there's nothing more important than having time. When my mother was passing away, that's when it dawned on me. If I had my own business at that time, I could have been with my mother day and night, night and day. And instead, I literally had to go to my employer and say, my mother is dying, and I'm going to stay in that hospital. I'm going to sleep right there with my mom. And if you fire me, you fire me. They didn't, but I was willing to do that. Think about this. If you're a woman and you really have a passion for helping other people with whatever you're good at, maybe it's creating relationships, maybe it's getting fit, maybe it's communication, maybe it's leadership. It literally could be anything, teaching them how to play guitar or cook healthy meals. I don't know what your particular interests, passions, skills, or hobbies are. So take a moment and imagine waking up tomorrow and you're literally living the life of your dreams. And while you're helping other women achieve something amazing in their life, you yourself are living a more fulfilled and passionate life. See, I'm so blessed that for the last almost 30 years now, I wake up every single day working myself happy. I work up every single day doing the work I love with the clients that I love and adore, making a massive and amazing difference for them, and having a lifestyle and freedom. And I want to talk about that freedom for just a moment. I understand that we all need to have income. Let's face it, that's what has us function in the world. And there's so many different ways to create income. If you have an employer, they are in control of your hours, when you get raises, how many days you can take off, when you get paid, how you get paid, so many other things. As an entrepreneur, what I am able to do is wake up every day and do what I choose to do. If I want to go spend time in a park watching kids play, I can do that. If I want to have what I call white space, where I have no appointments and I just show up and say, hey, Terry, what do you want to do? And then in that moment, I get to make a choice based on the fact that I have freedom. Time freedom is so important to me. think about this with me for a moment and really breathe this in. Time, it's such a precious commodity. The day my mom left this planet, the day Marnie Hope Reesberg left this planet, they ran out of time. Marnie was busy doing her to-do list. And you know what? We only get our to-do list finished when we're done, literally in the grave. Because you can endlessly just say, oh, here's 30 to-dos. Well, I got 28 done. I'll put 2 more on for tomorrow, and then I'll add more tomorrow, and it's more and more and more. This is about living the life you've always dreamed of. So this is my story, and I would like for you to create your own story. To give you a little tip. You ready? Imagine going decade by decade in your life saying, what brought me joy and passion when I was 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30? If you're older than that, you can keep on going. And in every single decade, going back and saying, what did I love? And then finding a way to incorporate more of that into your life. And that's what I did. When I went back and I did 0 to 10, I remembered that I liked, at the time, by the way, I was speaking on stages when I was 5 years old. And I remembered that I really liked speaking to audiences. It was fun. And then when I went to 10 to 20, and those were my college years, I loved learning about ways to communicate and to help people. And then when I went 20 to 30, it's like, well, that's when I started my first couple of businesses. And that's when I also started helping friends and family and other women that I knew create their own businesses. See, that was a clue for me that that was my passion. And you see how all these decades kind of tied together and they all had an underlying theme? That was like my aha moment, my wake-up call that being a CEO of a company, well, that was kind of an ego thing. It wasn't what I really wanted to do. It might have made me sound and feel good because, oh, look, I'm a CEO of a national healthcare organization. Yet being very transparent and authentic with you, I was miserable. So each of us in each moment, we have the opportunity to create our own story, to bring our own uniqueness to the world. And I really believe that this is your time. So how did I know it was my time? It was that misery factor. It was, it's Sunday. Maybe you can relate. I don't want to go to work in the morning. It was being at work going, it's a long day. Doing a lot of tasks that didn't fulfill me. And at the end of the day, I was making a lot of money. It was hard to leave. Being very honest again, those golden handcuffs were on tight. However, I did leave. At the end of the day, are you truly happy? That's what it's all about. Are you truly happy? Are you living your best life? I like to live a delicious life. I literally wake up every day. This is where I am today, and I'm so excited to share with you. Wake up every day. Whether I'm living in my house in Mexico, walking on the beach, whether I'm living at my home in New Jersey where I'm also living on the beach, or whether I'm here, where I happen to be today in my home in Pennsylvania with my gym and my steam room, I wake up in the morning and I say, oh, what feels good? And I get to go do that. And then I spend several hours making a major impact for my own clients, helping them grow their businesses. And at the end of the day, I have time to wind down, to be with me, whether I want to give back to my community or a charity or do one of my spiritual practices or journal or read or take a walk, whatever. So this is my story. I want you to think about how you can make your story even better and more delicious. I spent 5 years in that corporate job, not happy, feeling down, somewhat depressed, and constantly asking myself, really? Is this all there is to life? Is this it? I don't know if you can relate. If you can relate to any of this, I really do want you to stop for a moment and start imagining the possibilities and potential. That's what happened to me. Once I opened my mind and became curious and open, I'll tell you how I found my career. I literally was getting on an airplane to go to a mind, body, and spirit expo. And I sat next to a woman on the plane, short flight, like a 30-minute flight from Philadelphia to Boston. And I just said, what do you do? And this was going back around 28, 29 years ago. And she said, I'm a coach. Now, I never heard of coaching back then. So ignorantly, I said, oh, what kind of team? What sport? She chuckled and she said, no, I'm a business coach. She told me a little bit about that. By the time I got off the plane, a 30-minute flight, I knew in my heart and in my soul, this was what I was meant to do. This is what I would be at home doing. This was my passion. So I hope that you can find your passion as well. If you seriously want to find your passion, if you want to then turn that passion into profits, and if you want to work yourself happy and create your story and help other people and make money at the same time while having time freedom and money freedom, doing what you love every single day and loving what you do every single day, I invite you over to my Facebook private by invitation only community with about 6,400 other business owners just like you, who are like-minded, who are enthusiastic, who are passionate. And it's called Heartrepreneurs with Terry Levine. Heartrepreneurs with Terry Levine. So the word heart and then the word entrepreneur kind of combined. Heartrepreneurs with Terry Levine. Once you get in there, say hello. I am on a mission to help as many women as possible discover their passion. So there's my story. See what pieces of it you might be able to relate to. See what pieces of it might make a difference for you. If you just heard one thing that makes a difference, well, that could make all the difference. I hope that my story helps you to create your story. I'll see you in the Facebook group. Again, it's Heartrepreneurs with Terry Levine.
Thank you so much, Dr. Terry Levine. Amazing nuggets of wisdom you have shared there. It's interesting how people find their passion by accident sometimes. You might meet somebody who's doing something that you would want to do. What would you do next if you had a choice, or if you could make a deliberate choice? A lot of us stay in the jobs, in the professions that we're in, not because we love to do it, but because we feel stuck. We feel we don't have any other options. We actually forget that we have a choice where to spend the 8 hours of your day, where you're making an income, and whether you're happy or you're sad. So are you stuck? Are you one of those people who needs to reinvent themselves, change their career, explore a new part of yourself that you know is there? You're afraid to even go there and give it a try. But if only somebody could give you a little nudge that this is the time. So I hope Dr. Terry Levine's presentation is that nudge for you. If it is, please get in touch with me. It's always interesting for me to see the impact of these amazing stories on other people, the impact on these stories on the women that are in our network. You know, sometimes you just have to hear somebody's inspiration for you to create your own inspiration. and not doubt yourself, not be fearful. I think today's presentations have been awesome in the sense that they were so different from people from all walks of life, people challenged with health issues, COVID, starting a new career. What are you going to do with the rest of your life? How are you going to ensure that you are happy? It's food for food for thought. Bit of a tongue twister there. It is food for thought. And what's fascinating is just understanding that the choice is yours. There's nobody out there holding you back but yourself. You are your own limitation. So make that choice. So for the next hour, that ends this online summit for today. I'm going to share with you a series of videos that I've had to put together. These amazing speakers contributed their stories to us today to share with the whole community. And I want you to enjoy these presenters, knowing that I'll be back tomorrow with more inspiring speakers. Everybody who's contributed so far, thank you, thank you, thank you for your stories. You are the reason why I wake up and do what I do every single day. Absolutely love you. You inspire me. I will see you again tomorrow, 7 a.m. in New Zealand, 9 a.m. in Melbourne, Australia, 4 p.m. US Pacific time. In the meantime, have a fantastic day wherever you are in the world.
Hi, my name is Dr. Terry Levine. I am 63 years
when they came for
mind, body, and spirit.
I'm good, thank you. Also,
And money freedom, doing what you love every single day and loving what you do every single day. I invite you over to my Facebook private by invitation only community with about 6,400 other business owners just like you, who are like-minded, who are enthusiastic, who are passionate. And it's called Heartrepreneurs with Terry Levine. Heartrepreneurs with Terry Levine. So the word heart and then the word entrepreneur kind of combined. Heartrepreneurs with Terry Levine. Once you get in there, say hello. I am on a mission to help as many women as possible discover their passion. So there's my story. See what pieces of it you might be able to relate to. See what pieces of it might make a difference for you. If you just heard one thing that makes a difference, well, that could make all the difference. I hope that my story helps you to create your story. I'll see you in the Facebook group. Again, it's Heartrepreneurs with Terry Levine.
I'm good, thank you. Also here in sunny Arizona, so even though we're far apart, it's warm.
That's awesome. Please just
tell everybody who you are, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Okay. My name is Karen Kelt, and I was born in São Paulo, Brazil in 1953. So I'm 66. I will be 66 in a month. And when I grew up in Brazil, I had a very privileged lifestyle. Grew up in Brazil and lived there for all of my life. And I got married when I was 23. I married the great-grandson of a New York State senator whose family, they were also Americans living in Brazil at the time.
Okay.
And 4 months after we had this fairy tale wedding, we were woken up in the middle of the night and taken from our home by men who claimed they were police. At the time, I did not believe them. Kidnapping was something that happened fairly regularly.
Okay.
And they showed us badges, but I didn't believe them, but they were. And they ended up taking us to a prison in downtown Sao Paulo. We were never charged with any crime.
Did they say why they were taking you?
Well, they told us that they were looking for drugs and drug dealers.
Okay.
And we were neither. We were not anything of the sort. And it was common for police in Brazil to extort money from Americans. It was very common. So we began to assume that that's what was going on. Little did we know that they were trying to get a tremendous amount of money, which obviously we didn't have. So they kept us for 45 days. And
45 days?
Yes, 45 days.
Oh.
And we were together for the first 3 days. And then they separated us, and that's when things went from bad to really bad. I was raped, and then we were told that we were going to be 3 days there, and then that we would be released.
Mm.
And on the third day, when they came for me, I made the assumption that they were taking us out, that they were going to let us go. And instead, they took us to a room where they tortured both of us. And then they kept us separate from that day forward for 45 days. I would see my husband occasionally when we were taken to that room again. We were finally released. We paid, our family raised $400,000, which in 1976 was a tremendous amount of money. And yeah, and we were released, but we were both absolutely destroyed. We were both broken people. We were told, as was the time, not to talk about it. Just get over it, put it behind you. You have this bright future ahead of you. Don't talk about it. Move forward. If there's any advice I would ever give anyone who has any kind of a difficult story, talk about it. Talk about it. Tell people.
So you were suppressed for years. How long before you thought we were in a position to talk about it?
I didn't talk about it until 2010.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. What
did that do to you inside?
Oh, I was a mess. My marriage fell apart. My husband turned to drinking. I tried to get pregnant. Another mistake. Don't do something like that to try to save a marriage. I did get pregnant, but our marriage just didn't survive, didn't make it. And in Brazil at the time, there was no divorce. It was illegal. a man had full control over his wife and his child. And for me to feel like I wanted to live anyplace else, the only place I could think of was the US.
Yes.
And for me to do that, I would have to basically kidnap my son and run away. My parents, my father, who was also, a Brazilian male, very strong individual, who ran everything with a very strong hand, forbade me from leaving and told me that if I left, that he would completely disown me. And my mom, of course, went along with him. That's what women did.
Yeah.
That's what women did. And so I did. I managed to get enough money together and bought a ticket for myself and my son.
Mm-hmm.
I had to pretend that I was going away for a weekend to visit friends, so I couldn't take anything with me. I had a tiny suitcase for myself and a tiny suitcase for my son. And we came to Florida. And from there, I kind of moved to New York because my mom's family lived there. Okay. But I knew I couldn't contact them.
Yes.
Because if anybody found out where I was, they would come to take me back. Mm. So I hated New York. I knew it was so cold. It was too cold. And I moved to California. Kind of put a pin in a map. I had never been there before. Put a pin in a map and said, okay, California, they have beaches, they have sun. I think I'll do this. And found out, of course, that I didn't have the ability to get a job. I'd never worked before. I didn't know how to cook. Nothing. But I did. I got a job as a waitress and I cleaned toilets and did all the things that I had to do to survive.
Yes.
And eventually in 1980, that was 1979 that I went up, or early first month of 79. Mm-hmm. And then in 1981 or 82, I think it was, I got a divorce there in the States. Okay. And they granted me custody of my son. And so even from that point, I still was totally embarrassed and I didn't want to talk to anybody about what happened. But unfortunately, as I know now, that's not a smart thing to do, because I started drinking heavily. I got into using drugs. I was just a mess. I was having
to find a way to cope with all of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was really hard. In 1974, I met an amazing man who in 1976 became my husband. And even him, I told him why I was in the States and, what had happened, but I never really talked to him about it. I never gave him details.
Yeah.
It was still something that I bottled it up. Yeah. And I said, it's staying here. And that's what it did. It stayed in there, and I was angry a lot. I had a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But eventually, like I said, in 2010, I did start talking about it. I started taking yoga.
Okay.
And yoga was this vessel that gave me the opportunity to really reflect on what had happened. And I understood that I had to get rid of it.
Get it out of your system.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's when I decided that I would write a book and tell my story, but I was still afraid that there might be repercussions.
Yes.
And I was going to self-publish and do all this and using fictional names. Yes. And it just didn't feel quite right. And then I was invited to give my testimony at the Brazilian National Truth Commission. Oh. They had a program that the only way I describe it to people, it was similar to apartheid.
Yes, I was going to say, it sounds like the Truth Commission in South Africa.
Yes, and it was, and they got over 2,000 people that had survived those types of atrocities, and all of them, and myself included, gave our testimony. And the hope was that Brazil would then overturn a law that gives amnesty from prosecution to government torturers, but it didn't. It didn't. And then I met some amazing women who were authors and who worked in the publishing industry, and they suggested that I write a memoir. And so that's what I've just done, and the book is coming out in April of 2019. And again, anybody who has anything, that's what healed me. That's what healed me, was talking. It was cathartic to write it.
And that's the thing about, I was there in South Africa when the Truth Commission was running, and it gave people a space to sit side by side with the person who hurt them. And all they could do was just tell their story and what they experienced. But the healing that came out of that was phenomenal.
Yeah. We didn't, because most of the victims are actually still in Brazil. The Truth Commission sent not an envoy, an investigator to the UN in New York, and she did one-on-one interviews with me and with several other people, and I didn't ever meet any of them. And the interesting thing about it, interesting, was that when the Truth Commission published its report, and it's 2,000 people, some of whom, have lost limbs or lots of horrific things. When they gave their report, everyone was very hopeful, but there are still maybe between 10 and 20 men who are still alive and who still work for the government, who were the ones who inflicted this. They took out a full-page ad in the biggest newspaper in Brazil, saying that they will never apologize, that they would do it again if they had to, because they were following orders, and they would never apologize to anyone. And so that was the whole testifying before the Truth Commission. It was hopeful.
Yeah.
There was this big hope that it might change things.
But
and when they took that ad out, we knew.
Away.
Yeah.
It took everything away.
Yeah, and we knew they wouldn't change.
Wow.
And today, and that's because, I don't know, Brazil is very male dominated. Women are, they're second-class citizens. They do what the men tell them to do.
Yeah. And
for me, being in the States, I was able to thrive as a woman. I got jobs that, once I was married and I was settled down with my family, I did executive jobs. I was the first ever female general manager of a men's professional hockey team. Just things that never in a million years would I have dreamed of being able to do had I stayed in Brazil. And
so I want you to touch on something, because what I'm trying to do with this podcast series is to identify and see issues that are experienced by women worldwide, the impact it's had, and the nuggets of wisdom that you learned from that experience. Now, I can relate to what you've said because I come from a male-dominated society, coming from Africa and Zimbabwe. Yeah. The whole notion of family suppressing stories stories of rape, of physical and psychological abuse. What would you say to a woman who's in that position right now? What would you say to your younger self to find a way to cope, to navigate that space?
I would say that anything toxic like that in anyone's life, you need to get away from it as quickly as possible. Find a women's group that would support you and hold you up. Even if it's friends, talk to friends and they can lead you to a group of women. The idea of staying in a situation where you know it's wrong is very difficult for anyone.
But the challenge then comes in family. When you move, you're leaving everyone you love, everyone you know behind. You had to leave your mom.
Yep.
He was brought up in that environment. That's all she knew. That was her worldview. How did you cope with being away from your loved ones?
It was very difficult for me. And that's why, unfortunately, that's why I turned to drinking a lot and doing drugs, because I was always looking for something to replace what I'd left.
Yeah.
I honestly never regretted leaving because I knew that I was in control of myself.
And it was a matter of self-preservation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But
did you get to reconcile and reconnect with your family since?
I did. Eventually, I connected with my mother, and she had, in the 2 or 3 years that I didn't speak with any of my family, she had realized herself that she should have stuck by me.
Yeah.
And we had a very emotional conversation because I was angry at her.
Yeah.
I wanted her to stick up for me and go against, this
all these. Oh.
Yeah.
You felt like
she
couldn't. Down.
Yeah, she couldn't. So our first reconnection was very emotional, and she told me that she realized that she had made the wrong choice and that she had to have stuck by me. And in fact, within a year, she told my dad, who was now, quite older, she told him that she was going back to the States to be with me and her grandson, and he could either come or not. And that was a huge step for her.
Yes.
But that's exactly what she did.
Oh,
and she was already in her 60s.
So you in a sense empowered your mom to break out of that as well.
I think so, because she really, and when we talked, she told me, I always thought I was doing the right thing.
Yes.
I always thought I was protecting you and doing the right thing, and you would have this amazing life if you had stayed in Brazil, house and all the extra things that came along. And she thought that she was protecting me.
Yeah.
But she realized that it was more important to have that support of my family.
And to have her relationship with her daughter.
Yeah. And my son, it was magical because, we got to spend a good 20 years together before she passed, and it was wonderful.
That is beautiful.
Yeah.
And did you find a space in your heart to forgive the people who hurt you?
That's the biggest part for me, because I always kept it all locked up inside. I didn't talk about it, but it was there, and it was angry. And in yoga, this day that I had this sort of aha moment, my teacher at the end of the class started talking about forgiveness. I didn't know her. She was my teacher, and I'd seen her a couple of times, and I didn't know her. Yeah. So we're laying there in Savasana with our eyes closed, and she says, forgiveness is not, it's not about letting go of the past. Mm-hmm. Forgiveness is learning to live in the present. And when she said that to me, and I still do, I got goosebumps everywhere. And I went home and I thought to myself, well, because at the time, I hate to go back like this, but at the time when we were released, several people mentioned to me that they would have those men killed. And that was something they could have done in Brazil, the men who had taken us.
Yes.
And I that day that we were released, I said, no, I don't want to be any part of that. I don't want to ever see them again, but that's not what I want to do.
You didn't want their blood on your hands.
Yes. Well, not just that. It wasn't in my heart to ever do anything vile or evil like that anyway. But my father and several other people said, we'll kill them for you. We'll have somebody kill them. And I just said no. And I thought that I had let it go by doing that.
Yes, yes.
But I hadn't. No. And that's what yoga sort of, by thinking about it and talking about it and talking with friends, that's when I was able to, put that aside.
Yeah. Oh, wow. You have an amazing story, Karen. Thank you so much for online and sharing this morning.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Good luck with your book.
Thank you.
As soon as it's online, then I can share it with my community.
I would love to.
You are a phenomenal woman. I'm just so happy that you found happiness again and got on with your life.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. I look forward to staying in touch, and I'd love to see stories of the other women that you're working with as well.
I will share the links, definitely.
All right.
My mailing list. Take care, Karen.
You too. Thanks so much.
Bye.
So much, Gayatri, for having me here with your show. It's my pleasure to be here with you. And my name is Angela Teague. I'm based in Singapore, and I'm 54 years old. And here's my story. On the 25th of June, 1992, I was, my first born daughter was born, and I was blessed to have her. Unfortunately, I was able to celebrate my 27th birthday and her second birthday before her tragic death on the 21st of January, 1992. What happened was she was actually scalded by hot boiling water in the kitchen, and it was my fault. And for 5 years, I was living in constant guilt and shame because I couldn't forgive myself for a part that I had played in the death. Because when I carried my son in my arms, he had made me realize that I had to be strong for him. And therefore, I have to stop this. So
okay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
A little bit nervous.
Okay.
Can we redo for a while?
Yeah, we can redo it. So can I make a suggestion?
Did I start correctly?
Yeah, you started perfectly. So because it's a short story, you kind of have to fill in the gaps for people.
Okay.
You could mention that you had the other child, because you didn't mention your son until now.
Oh, okay. Sure.
So you were in the bedroom nursing your son, your new baby, and that your daughter was in the kitchen when she got hurt.
Okay.
So yeah, so those are the kind of details you want to make people aware of.
Oh, okay.
Because what will end up happening is somebody saying, so where were you? What happened? But you had another child.
Okay.
Are you with me? So start
Yes.
from the beginning.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. My name is.
Okay.
And like I told you, we have an hour. We can do this in
I
take
think
2
I'm
and take
nervous.
3.
I feel so natural talking with you the other day, but because I have to look at the camera again, maybe.
Okay, look at me. Let me see what the eye line looks like.
Okay, I'm looking at you now. Does
Yeah,
that
that's
look
actually not too bad.
okay? So can
See-
I look at you? Then I
Yeah,
feel
look at
more-
me instead.
Okay,
Yeah, because
great.
now you're looking up there. You don't really feel that connection, right?
Yeah, correct. It's
Okay.
like
All right.
okay, right?
So look at me
Sorry.
and just start with, hello, my name is, this is my age. I'm in Singapore. This is my story.
Okay,
Okay, go for it.
thank you. So I can start now?
Yep.
Okay. Hello, I'm Angela. I am based in Singapore and I am 54 years old. And my story is, it started since young. I was a very shy, introverted girl, and therefore I feel a little bit awkward in this world. But wait, sorry. Wait, should I start with my son, with my daughter first, right? Wait, I'm a little bit so sorry. Wait, you will do the edit, right?
Angela, just take a big breath. We will edit this. I will put out the perfect version of the story. Okay.
So I should start with my daughter first, right?
Yeah. Start with your daughter because that is the pivotal story.
Okay, sure. So I have to pretend that I'm just talking to you and just a casual talk.
Yeah, just like what we did the other day.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Let's start. So sorry.
Okay. It's okay.
Hi, I'm Angela. I am based in Singapore and I'm 54 years old. And this is my story. The pivotal point started when, after my marriage, when my firstborn daughter was born. I was blessed to celebrate my 27th birthday with her and her second birthday as well. Unfortunately, she passed away on the 21st of January, 1995. What happened was I was actually in the room taking care of my son, and she was in the kitchen using the potty. And there was actually an electric kettle boiling on the table. And I believe she happened to actually pull the electric cord while sitting beneath the table while using the potty. So I was actually in the room taking care of my son, and then I heard a scream. And then I realized that, she was actually scalded on the right thigh from the hot boiling water of the kettle. So because of that, I was living in constant guilt and shame for, I believe, for probably about 5 years. And because I couldn't forgive myself for her death, because I had a part to play in it. It was my fault. So because of her passing, I was living in, I believe in not just constant guilt and shame, but also for a period in depression. And at one point, I wanted to actually end my life, but holding my son in my arms made me realize that I had to be strong. And unfortunately, after 5 years of grieving in denial of her death and being able to accept her passing, my marriage actually collapsed after that, because both my ex-husband and myself were dealing in different levels, and we have lost connection spiritually, emotionally, in many ways. And we, at that point in time, we were not aware of the tools and strategies to save our marriage. Moving or fast forward, I was completely, I felt like a complete failure after my divorce because I felt that I failed as a mother and I failed as a wife, and so therefore my self-worth and self-confidence has completely collapsed to zero. And thankfully, because of the grace of God, I found myself immersed in a church which has taught me to forgive myself, and therefore I have plucked up my courage to face life with strength and courage again. And transitioning from a stay-home mom to a working single mom, I learned to be a father and a mother to my son, and also I learned to be involved in helping my son to ensure that his physical well-being, his emotional well-being, and his physical well-being, emotional well-being, and physical well-being is being taken care of, as I felt that he has lost a sense of directions since seeing his parents divorce. And
can I jump in here?
You
went through a lot in your life.
Correct.
You know, they say that the saddest thing in life is burying your own child.
Yes.
And for you to be able to come out of that and put your life together, bring up your son, have your marriage collapse, how did you cope? What was it that made you wake up every single day and keep going?
Okay, what actually kept me going was, I believe the first thing is my son, because he was still young then. He was actually, I believe he was actually then a few months old when my daughter passed away. So what actually kept me going, the first, number one thing is my son. Number two thing is actually God. Because even though I'm a believer, my faith was actually not strong when I faced with my daughter's death and my marriage, because being human, I felt that I'm a complete failure. And what kept me going was the grace that I found in having God forgiven me of my past sin, present sin, and future sin. So that kept me going. And also, I also realized that I have a responsibility towards my son and also towards my parents, and because they brought me up. So, and also another thing is that my father has a part to play too. He has taught me to never give up on myself, and he has taught me to look at life as even though I'm sheets, because
because I would have been stopping in the middle of the roundabout. So my
story, and we will see if we can get your book in our bookstore on our website and help you market and promote it.
Gertrude, Lovely to be here. My name's Nicole Yates. I'm from Brisbane, Australia, and I'm 50 years old, but who's counting? And my story started when I was 16 years old. You may remember when you were a teenager and thought you knew it all. That was me. And I'd started working from the age of 14, part-time jobs, and I basically got my first tax return at the age of 15 and bought myself a motorcycle, much to my mother's horror. And this night, the 19th of June, 1987, was a night that changed my life forever. I was planning to go to a basketball game with my girlfriends, and it was a Friday night, a cold, wintry night. It was raining, and I argued with my mother before I set foot out the door onto my motorbike. She didn't want me to take the motorbike out. Anyway, I'm driving along to the basketball game and approaching a roundabout when suddenly the lights on my motorcycle just go out for no reason. I couldn't stop right there because I would have been stopping in the middle of the roundabout. So my plan was to get to the other side of the roundabout and figure out what was wrong with my lights, fix it, and keep going. Unfortunately, I never got to the other side of the roundabout. I was hit by a driver, hit and run. He left me on the road for dead. He dragged me for about 200 meters. I was entangled in my motorbike. The motorbike was entangled on his bumper bar. He dragged my motorcycle for about another 800 meters. Sparks flying. It was loud. The bike ended up catching fire, apparently, and I was left on the road for dead. So I died on the road there, but was fortunate enough that a passerby who stopped was a nurse who happened to have oxygen in his car, and he revived me, called the ambulance, and in hospital I died another couple of times, and my poor mother was told, expect death or life in a vegetative state. They asked her to sign organ donation forms, put me on life support. And yes, so another two near-the-death experiences that night, and I lapsed into a natural coma for 3 weeks. Mum tried everything to try and awaken me from that coma, even playing music she hated. At the time, it was Violent Femmes. And my friends and neighbours and everything would come in and talk to me, and Mum even tried to bribe me out of the coma. She said that she would buy me a puppy if I woke up because I'd wanted a puppy, and still nothing. But 3 weeks later, I slowly started to come out of the coma, but I couldn't talk and I couldn't walk and I couldn't move any muscle in my body. I couldn't control my bodily functions. My brain was so damaged, it couldn't even control my temperature. So it was a long rehabilitation. Well, comparatively with the prognosis, it wasn't that long, but physio, occupational therapy, speech therapy, psychological therapy, hydrotherapy, there were lots of therapies. And I did end up walking out of the hospital, but still the doctors had a very negative prognosis for my future. You'll never finish school, no university. I've got a report that basically says if Nicole was ever to return to any form of employment in the future, it would need to be highly supervised and not meaningful work. In other words, like a sheltered workshop. And, I wasn't prepared to have that sort of future. So I thought about creating something different.
Nicole, your story is a miracle. and every mother's nightmare. I can't begin to imagine what this put your mother through. Now, let's go back a couple of steps. There must have been something in you that has brought you to the age of 50. There must have been a spark, a light. Take us through your rehabilitation, how you defied all these odds.
Well, Gertrude, I'm very, very stubborn. When the doctors said you can't, it was like a red flag to a bull. It was like, right, I'm going to prove you wrong. And that became my driving motivation for everything from that point on. It was something that drove me. When I had the second near-death experience, I went to the other side and I was told, it's not your time yet, you've got more to teach. So I guess I can only explain that fire in my belly that keeps me pushing on and fighting through barriers and wanting to do what I do today, which is help people reach their highest potential, particularly after brain injury, brain trauma. It's just something within me that I can't really explain, but it's something that I know is my higher purpose, if you like.
Wow. Yeah, so this is a light at the other end of somebody's tunnel, from what I can hear. You certainly had a will in you that has carried you up until this point. So if I was to say that time is an illusion, and I'm going to take you back to that young girl, based on what life has taught you, if there was somebody who's going through a similar experience, what are the words you would have wanted to hear? What 3 nuggets of wisdom can you share?
Yeah, look, it wasn't as simple as just sort of waking up and getting back to a normal life. There were a lot of stages in between there and there were times where I wished I hadn't survived that accident. I got so depressed because I couldn't walk properly. I couldn't talk properly. I couldn't remember what, someone told me 5 minutes ago. I couldn't read a book anymore because I couldn't remember one page of a book. So there were a lot of barriers. I had epilepsy. I couldn't drive anymore. And I guess if speaking to that young lady now, I would surround her with as many positive people as possible. I was so lucky to be supported by my beautiful mother, who never gave up on me. And I would say to take small steps at a time and set yourself up for success. So if it's just having a shower every day, that is a step towards progress. Work within your limitations, but don't let other people's limiting beliefs dictate your future. That would be my key thing. Other people's limiting beliefs are things that we do not have to take on board. And if you set yourself up for success by taking those small steps towards progress, then those steps will be your friend.
It's almost as if every single small step adds up. It doesn't matter how small it feels at the time. It's an accumulation of stretching yourself day by day, correct?
Absolutely. And get a celebration jar, have a positivity jar or a celebration jar, something that every time that you make a small step of success, and that could be reading a book. It could be, as I said, having a shower every day for a week. Write it down and put it in that jar and watch that jar fill up. Our brains are visual. Our brains are a visual thing. So if you're not guiding the brain with some sort of visual, it can get a bit lost.
Wow. We're going to take a small commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to delve into the book that you wrote and the app that you have created to help other people going through a similar challenge. So we'll be back in a minute, everybody.
Wonderful.
Welcome back, everybody. That was a quick reminder to let you know that the Herstory Online Summit is going to be taking place from the 20th of November to the 30th of November. We have a range of some of the most dynamic speakers, including Nicole. So please go onto our website, register to attend, and we still have a few speaking slots, so register to speak as well. Nicole, welcome back.
Thank
Let's
you.
talk about your book. What is
Yes.
the book about? What is the mission behind this book?
So, Holding On to Hope, I started writing this book at the beginning of the COVID lockdown in Brisbane in 2020. So, turning lemons into lemonade a little bit. And basically, when I looked at books out there with regards to people's experience with brain injury, I found a bit of a gap in the market. Now, I'm a rehabilitation counsellor and a certified brain health professional. And really, I saw a lot of stories, but not a lot of concrete strategies, tools, and resources for people to actually go, well, how do I, make my way through that barrier? How did you make your way through that barrier, sort of thing? So the book is written through my story, but with my rehabilitation counsellor hat on. And it's a very solution-focused book. So if you're struggling with returning to work and not sure about whether you should disclose your injury to an employer, if you just want some inspiration, if basically you're a bit lost and wondering how to create the new you after a brain injury. So it's Holding On to Hope, Finding the New You after a traumatic brain injury. And I've put traumatic brain injury because that's my experience. However, most brain injuries have very similar sort of struggles, memory, concentration, neural fatigue, as an example. So there are strategies in this book for all of those things, but it's also an inspirational read to really give people hope. And hope is the key word here. I heard so much negativity from doctors and health professionals about my future, but there was one health professional who gave me hope. He didn't just write me off and say, no, you couldn't do that. He actually gave me an IQ test and said, if I wanted to go to university, it's going to be really, really hard and you're going to have to try really, really hard. But he didn't say you can't do it. And that's hope. And I graduated from university in 2005.
That is just fantastic. And then you took your career in a direction that is helping other people who have gone through what you went through. Do you think if you hadn't had this injury, you would have done that? Do you think you would have gone in a different direction?
I don't know. Before my accident, I wanted to be a psychologist, but in reality, at the time, I'm not sure if it was a bit of a pipe dream or I was heading down a fairly rebellious, I should say, pathway as a teenager. So I don't know, but certainly the accident did provide me with ample motivation to want to prove those doctors wrong, to turn that accident into something really positive, not just for myself, but for other people. And in my work in occupational rehabilitation, I help people with all sorts of injuries, psychological and physical, that have been injured at work, and I help them to return to the workforce. And it's been just in the last year that I've really, through writing the book, reaching out to more people with brain injury and identifying some gaps that, could be filled, that I've sort of also narrowed down into the brain health area and recently completed my brain health certification with Dr. Danielle Amen, which was amazing. And so looking forward to 2022 and bringing all these brain health programs into my portfolio.
Wow. This is such an inspiring story of somebody who went through such a tragic experience, managed to turn it around, and now going out in the world and helping other people. Let's now delve a little bit into the app that you've designed. Tell us what the app is about. What does it do? How can people get access to it?
So Rethink And you'll notice there's no H in rethink. It's the I from tinker and I from rethink, because after a brain injury, you need to sort of tinker with new ways of doing things and rethink everything. So Rethink is basically a brain boosting tool, and memory management app. So on the app, it basically has brain training games, it has brain health information. You set your appointments and tasks into the Rethink app, and it'll give you reminders an hour before that task or appointment is due and 15 minutes before it's due, and you earn points. There's 10 levels, so it really keeps you engaged. 10 levels to work your way up, and everything you do in the app, whether you're reading one of the blog articles, you're setting an appointment, you're ticking off a task that you've done, you can earn points. Plus, the other thing is that if you rely on a carer or support person to take you to appointments or help you with tasks, you can invite them into your app, and then you can invite them into the appointment or task you need help with. So it'll show up in your calendar and their calendar, and it auto-populates with Google. So it's free on Google Play and the App Store. Rethink.
Fantastic. Wow, it's absolutely wonderful to see what you have done with all of these things. It's incredible. So let's just imagine for a moment that time is an illusion, and your past, your present, your future exist in the same timeline. And I can teleport you into your future, to that amazing woman who connected millions of people through this app, people who read her books. If you were to have a conversation with a future you, what would you say to her?
I would say, believe in yourself and just do it. Just do it.
Absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Now, Nicole, one of the questions I always ask everybody in my podcast is there anything I left out? Sometimes I will leave out a question that somebody is listening to right now and waiting to hear. What else would you like to share with our viewers?
Oh, look, I would just say that if you're someone who's experiencing limiting beliefs, or someone else is putting their limiting beliefs on you, then you can turn that situation around by giving your unconscious a different story. Give it the story that you want it to hear to get the outcome you want. It's, we're blessed with the most amazing resources. The best computers in the world are our brains, but we've got to program them the right way to get the results we want.
Fantastic. And that is the power of the human mind. We get to make that choice and not just be driven by what's coming out from the outside of us.
Absolutely. Just being conscious of that is so important.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you so much for coming online today and inspiring our community with your amazing story. I'm really excited that you're going to be one of our speakers at the Herstory Online Summit in November.
Yes, that'll be amazing.
Yes, and everybody please go onto our website, register to attend this incredible event. We've got some amazing speakers from all over the world. And Nicole, thank you again for this interview.
Thank you so much, Gertrude. It's just wonderful to meet you, and I look forward to the summit.
Thank you. And thank you, everybody. I'll be back again tomorrow with yet another fascinating guest. Have a fantastic day, morning, evening, wherever you are in the world. Bye for now. Thank you, Nicole.
Bye.
thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to talk to you. My name is Alexis Hasselberger, and I am based in San Francisco, California in the US, where you would think it is sunny, but it is not always sunny. I'm 40 years old. Can't believe that I'm saying that now. And in terms of my story, you know, I am a time management and productivity coach, and I help people to essentially do more and stress less in their lives. And thinking about, you know, how did I get there? What am I doing and why do I do this? You know, I always think about when I was a kid, right? Because I think it's so easy in retrospect to look at the threads of your life and pull them together into a story that makes sense. But at the time, you have no idea what's going on, right? You're just kind of trying to do the best that you can. And so if I think about myself and my life, I feel like I was always a kid who was really focused on a high ROI for my time, although I would never have used those words at the time. You know, I was a kid who, when I was 8, I would grab the graph paper and the TV guide, and I would cross-reference to find the best half an hour that I was allowed to watch every day. And I would put that on my little schedule. And when I was in high school, I remember distinctly thinking like, okay, I need to get straight A's. That's important to me. I need to have top marks. But also I want to do this with the least amount of time and effort possible for me. You know, I want to do well, but I want to have a lot of time for me. And so I started, you know, I remember specifically, I made a deal with my French teacher. I said, okay, if I just show up for the tests and get A's, then can I not go to class in between the tests? And I think he agreed, because he thought there's no way, and then, you know, she'll come back to class. But I didn't. I got straight A's and I just didn't go. I made deals with my band teacher because I was terrible at band, but I played the flute and I was just horrible. And I made a deal with him that it would be better for everyone if I would just not go to band class and instead write 3 papers about, about music during the year. And it would be to everyone's benefit if I just wasn't in there. And so I started doing that sort of thing when I was young. And then it led me, you know, many years later, after a year, you know, years and years working in startups, doing operations and HR and finance and that sort of thing, I just realized that this was actually the thing that I cared about the most, was how do I figure out how to have the most amount of time for myself while still being excellent at all the kind of work things that have to be done.
That is just absolutely amazing. You know, when you think of the amount of time we spend focused on things that don't really inspire us, don't make us want to wake up and get up and do them every day, you literally handpicked things that were appropriate for you. Now, this led you into the coaching world. And, you know, when I was reading your bio, I was so impressed with the kind of clients that you've attracted, corporate clients like Google and Lyft and Capital One. What kind of programs and courses do you run for those organizations?
Yeah, so I work with individuals and I work with corporations, and sometimes a little bit of both. And so on an individual basis, I work with people on a kind of coaching program that allows us to take things one step at a time, layer by layer, and through a kind of an arc, we arrive at a personalized productivity system for each person based on who they actually are. Because I think, you know, I'm an inveterate night person. You know, I can't get up in the morning to save my life. Waking up has been the hardest part of my day since I was 5 years old and had to go to kindergarten. And if you tell me, oh, just wake up earlier before your kids are awake and that's when you'll do your productive stuff, I'm going to say absolutely no way. Like, that's never going to happen. And so I really approach individuals from that perspective of, let's just build strategies around who you actually are so that they can be sustainable, so that you can really evaluate what do you want to spend your time on, and how do you then put practices in place to spend time on the things you care about versus a lot of other stuff that, you know, exists there as obligation, et cetera, that we could probably get out of. From a corporate perspective, I do a lot of workshops with companies. And so those range from, you know, things like task management, prioritization, and planning. In the COVID period, I've done a lot around like mastering remote leadership and how to work at home and maintain your sanity, essentially, right? When you've got, I mean, you may hear my kids, in fact, going back and forth outside here, right? And so how do we do that and still be as productive as we can so that we can really experience that separation between work and life that helps us to feel like whole human beings?
I like that. Now, at this moment in time, a lot of people have had to change their ways of being. They've had to really adapt to what is happening with the COVID pandemic. Are you seeing people becoming more productive now than before? Or is it working against us, do you think?
I think it really depends on each person's situation. So I think, I have two kids who are, 10 and 12, right? I've worked from home for a long time and I've really enjoyed it. I've worked from home for probably the last 7 or 8 years. Working from home with my kids here is an entirely different experience, right? Yeah. I think I'm actually not as productive when they're home as I was before. Maybe I'm doing more on the whole because there's more to do, but I don't feel like as efficient as I was when I worked from home. There's no one there. I think that there are some people for whom they'd never got to experience what working from home was like. And now they're, in their own houses and there's nobody around them. There's loud talking coworkers to bother them, or, they have swaths of time where they can actually focus and get things done. And I think those people have really benefited from this. I think, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert really matters, right? This has been a hard time for extroverts, and introverts are like, do I ever have to go back? This is amazing. Let me stay like this. So I think it's not an easy answer, I guess is what I'm saying.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it's just going to depend on the individual, really, on how we're going to be able to cope with this time. Now, you talked about remote leadership. Mm-hmm. Leaders are having to keep their teams motivated and going from a distance, not in the same kind of physical space. So if you were to talk to somebody who is in that situation, what 3 nuggets of wisdom can you give us in terms of remote leadership right now?
Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest things we can do is lead with trust. So resist the urge to micromanage people. Just because they're not there in the same space with you does not mean that somehow their work ethic has gone out the window, right? We need to set clear goals, work towards those goals, and not worry about being in people's hair all the time about, okay, what did you do today? Or, what are you going to do this afternoon, et cetera. So I think number one is no micromanagement. That is a big productivity killer for everybody. I think another thing that we can do from a leadership perspective is to make sure that we have the tools that we all need and that we're using them all in the same way. So what I mean by this is that one of the things I've seen is that if I go into a room and maybe there's 10 people on a team and I say, how quickly should emails be answered? I'll get 10 different answers, right? If I say the same thing, how quickly should a Slack message be answered? I'll get 10 different answers. And so this causes a lot of kind of friction for people, because if you have all these wildly different expectations on your team about, well, one person thinks it's okay to go several hours or a day, and another person thinks things should be answered within 5 minutes. Now everybody has to keep notifications on and feel like they're always on all the time. So getting together with your team and saying, okay, what are our rules around these things so that we can all be on the same page? Yeah. And then the last nugget I would say is fewer meetings, just fewer meetings all around, more asynchronous work, fewer meetings, so that people have some control over their time. Because one thing that has happened during this time is that there was a study done out of NYU and Harvard in the US where we're actually in 13% more meetings now that we're in this COVID period of time, and we're getting more emails. And so people just feel like they have no breathing room.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, so trying not to micromanage sounds to be the key.
Yeah, yes. And it's hard. Yeah, I think it's hard for people, but it's so important for people to feel that they have autonomy and ownership of the work that they're doing.
So if I was to take you back to your younger self, and if you could have a conversation with that young girl who just didn't do really well in confined, structured ways of education, if you could give her some nuggets of wisdom, and I'm asking this because there could be a young woman who's listening to us right now,
Yeah.
exactly like you, thinking, why am I in this course? This is a total waste of my time. What 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give based on what life has taught you?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is to figure out what good enough is in any situation. Because I think if we are going, especially those situations where we're in something and we're not enjoying it, right? Like, what is good enough? And I think that, I mean, good enough is maybe my favorite phrase. People think that it's settling, but it's not. Good enough is exactly what it is. It's good enough for the situation, right? And so I think that that is the most important thing. Now, in some of these classes I was taking, right, I figured like good enough for me personally is getting an A. Like, I don't need all whatever the other stuff that comes with that. Yeah. In their certain situations at work, right, it's like good enough is, you know, having something there to move the ball forward. It doesn't need to be pretty. We don't need to like make sure all the pixels are in the right place. Whereas other types of situations, if we're giving a big presentation to a client, or, you know, maybe we're writing our college essays or something like that for a young person, those things we want to spend more time on because the bar for good enough is higher. And I think that when you start looking at what does good enough mean in any situation, then you get to that line that's beautiful, where you're not putting in any more effort than is required to get exactly what you want out of the situation.
Oh, that is awesome. That's absolutely awesome. So let's now just talk about stress. I know one of your strengths is in helping people reduce stress and try and get on top of things.
Mm-hmm.
What is your advice? Because people are very, very stressed out right now, not just on a work level, on a personal level, or not having access to family, to friends because of the COVID pandemic. Give us a few of your stress management tactics, so to speak.
Yeah, so one of the biggest things I think we can do for our stress is to actually get everything out of our head. And so I think that this is, you know, so many of us keep to-do lists running through our head. We fall asleep thinking about all the things that we need to do tomorrow, or that we failed to do today. Or maybe, you know, maybe we keep lists, but we have 25 of them, right? We have Post-it notes all over our desk, and we're using Asana for work. And also we've got, you know, this beautiful planner that somebody gifted us over here. And we've got, you know, a legal pad, and we just got things everywhere, including in our heads. And I think one of the best things we can do for stress is to get everything out of all those places and consolidate it in one place that is not our brain, in an external source. So, you know, I use an app I love called Tick Tick, not TikTok. That is not a productivity app, but Tick Tick, Tick. And this is just a place where you could dump everything, and then you can prioritize linearly. Because I think what happens is that we get really stressed and overwhelmed by all the things that we have to do, think we have to do, that keep coming up at inopportune times. You know, when you're trying to write that proposal and your brain is going, my passport expires in 7 years. Like, I need to think about that, right? And all of these things that show up. Yes. If we can get them all in one place, then we can really take care of some of that stress, because we don't have to worry that we're, you know, we're missing something. We just don't know what it is or when it's going to come back to bite us.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I have those moments where I wake up in the middle of the night and I remember something I should have done, didn't do. And it's just, and then you can't sleep because your brain's thinking, I'm going to forget again tomorrow. So just having a brain dump and dumping all of your ideas, that's a really good piece of advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And then speaking of that, right, it's just do that. But try this tonight before you go to sleep. Just write, even if it's just a piece of paper or whatever, write down all the things you're thinking about. Just write them down and see if that helps you sleep easier. And do that at transition points, like when your day is over. Dump all that work stuff out of your head so that you can then go focus on the other stuff that we want to be doing.
I love that. I actually started my day with a to-do list. I break a page in half and I write it down manually. And on the left-hand side, I write down everything that I can do, that I have the power to get done. And on the left-hand side, I normally write down things that the universe has to work out for me. You know, how sometimes you've got something going on and you're not quite sure how you're going to solve the problem. I remember doing this once with my Facebook account had been hacked. And I had tried everything. I recreated new accounts. I kept getting blocked. And then I gave up. I just said, okay, universe, you sort this out. And the weirdest thing happened about 2-3 days after I did this. A young boy contacted me on LinkedIn. He had watched one of my TED Talks, Canadian kid, and he said, Gertrude, I'm so inspired. I did a degree in social entrepreneurship, would love to connect with you. And I started talking to him on Zoom. And it turns out this little boy, 23-year-old, is working in Ireland for Facebook head office. And in one day, he had my account restored. So sometimes we kind of let go of some of these things, right, that we don't have the control over.
Right, right. You know, there's two cheesy quotes I love about that locus of control. And I love the way that you do that and separate that in one way. One of them is, if you can do something about it, why worry? And if you can't do something about it, why worry? Right? And then the other one I really like is, if it's out of your hands, it should be out of your head.
Oh, wow. Those are just beautiful, beautiful reminders of where we should really be putting our focus.
Right.
Excellent.
Right. I love that you do that in those two ways on the paper, with like things I can control and things I'm still worried about, but I can't quite control.
And the thing is, like you said, it's a brain dump. You've got it out of your psyche. You've got it out of your head. It's on paper.
Yeah. Yeah. And what a difference that.
I am writing multiple books at the same time. I was one of those kids who my mother said I had ADHD, just I wasn't medicated. So I need to do multiple things. Drives everybody around me crazy because it looks like I'm never going to get anything done. Yep. But I do. So when you are working with different personality types, because everybody works differently, yep. My mind can't focus on one thing. I will never get it done. Mm-hmm. But if I've got multiple things and I can jump out of this project and go into the next one and it all gets done at the end of the day. Yeah. How do you assess your clients? What kind of personality types have you found throughout your career, your coaching career?
Yeah, so when I start working with people, I always talk to them about several different scales, or of different traits and things. And they're things that some of us are familiar with, some of us aren't familiar with all of them. But it's things like introversion, extroversion. It's things like their chronotype, right? They're morning or night people. It's things like their what is their kind of learning style, right? Are they more visual, or are they kinetic and they need to move around and do things a lot? It's things like how they handle internal versus external expectations, and how that can help us to kind of put a little like thing behind us when we are trying to, when we want to do something, but somehow we're just not doing it, when we ostensibly tell ourselves we want to do it, but then we're not doing it. What do we do there? And so I work with people on a number of these different traits just to see where you are. Because I think, like you said, you're someone who says, okay, I need to be working on a lot of things. Like, that's what gets me energized. So I would never suggest that you block off like several hours to try to just work on one thing, right? Because that wouldn't go well for you. What I think that a lot of people, it's interesting because a lot of the different tactics can be applied in different ways for different people. So one thing that I always talk about is that we want to have a clear next action for anything we're working on. So you might be working on 10 different books, but if you have a clear next step for each one, then that allows you to bounce around, and it's okay because you know what you need to get done in any given time. Now, even if you're someone who likes to, hyper focus and work all day on one thing, if you know the next steps, you won't procrastinate on it, because we procrastinate on the amorphous, right?
Oh, I love that. This has been a fascinating interview. You have a fascinating way of working too. I just absolutely love how you have harnessed all of the aspects of who you are to help other people get themselves to be more productive, work with less stress, and achieve more of their goals. So is there a question I should have asked you and I didn't?
That's a very good question. Let's see. Now I'm caught off guard here. I think that people usually ask, like, what's your one best tip? Like, what should everyone know, right?
Yes.
And so I can give you that one if you're.
I'm open to that.
So one thing that I hear from basically everyone that I work with is they have too many emails. Like it's email overload. Their inboxes are just in the thousands. It's too much, right? So I have a very simple process for managing email, and it is it's called the one-touch rule. And this is essentially that when we process our email, there's only 3 things you can ever do with any email. There's no other thing except for these 3 things. The first one is that it's informational only and you don't need it. So you can archive it and just get it out of your inbox. You just read it, no response required. The second, it's something that you actually can respond to right away. So you either know the answer or within 3 to 5 minutes, you can find the answer, right? Wow. And in those cases, we just want to answer, even though we don't always feel like it, right? Sometimes we're like, I'm not quite ready for that. I'll just leave it there. I'll leave it as marked unread. But if we can answer it, we just want to answer it. And then the third thing is that we can't answer it because it requires research or approval, or it's just a big task or a project that somebody needs us to do and we can't do it right now. Yeah. And in these cases, we want to reply and let the other person know that we got their email, because if we don't, we're just getting more email, right? In 3 days when they say, did you get my email? So let them know you got their email, and then add whatever that thing is that you need to do to your task system or your task list or whatever you're using, because it actually needs to be reprioritized in with all your other work.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, there is an overwhelm when it comes to emails and responding. And I'm one of those people. I have multiple projects, like I said, and just trying to manage all of that can get quite crazy. So thank you so much for ending this amazing interview with another powerful way on how we can work more productively. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. I will be back again tomorrow with yet another fascinating interview. Thank you so much for coming online today, Alexis. Your nuggets of wisdom are very appreciated. Have a fantastic day, everybody, and bye for now. Thank you, Elise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, and that is the end of our online summit on the 20th day of March 2022. Andrea, I'm not sure if you're still awake there in the UK. I can see that you joined me for a few minutes. Thank you for being here and holding space. Come on camera if you are available and I can say hi before we go.
Yes.
There she is.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Hello.
Thank you for being here, Andrea. It was good to have you on the call.
Yes.
Sharing these amazing stories today. So we have been going for 20 days.
I know.
Tomorrow we'll be back again, same time, same place. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, everybody, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for tuning in today. It has been absolutely amazing. Love you, Andrea. Thank you for coming online.
Good night, darling. Good night. I love you too, and I'm going to sleep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.